Chapter 857. In short, Long Xiaojie was always at a disadvantage in every aspect of the battle. Even in terms of their respective backgrounds, Long Xiaojie was slightly inferior. Putting aside whether Wangu Tong or Hidden Dragon Manor was more powerful, the important thing was that Wan Ling's grandfather was Wangu Tong's sect master, while Long Xiaojie's grandfather was only an elder of Hidden Dragon Manor. On this point, Long Xiaojie was at a huge disadvantage. There were some things Wan Ling dared to say and do because Wan Boxing could handle it. But when it came to Long Xiaojie, she would have many scruples. After all, her grandfather could not be the master of Hidden Dragon Manor. Duke Long Yu furrowed his brows, sighed slightly and said, "Little Jiao, let bygones be bygones. There's no need to hold a grudge against a man who isn't worth it. Otherwise you'll be the one who gets hurt in the end." He then gave Guang Juanru a meaningful glance, and the latter immediately gave Guang Yanzu a meaningful glance as well. Long Xiaojie had been depressed ever since she experienced that setback in her relationship, and Guang Yanzu had been her firm pursuer for a long time. Thus, the elders of both sides had the intention of matchmaking. This trip to hallucinatory Immortal City, the two elders said that they were going to do something, but in reality, it was to create an opportunity for the two of them. In reality, if this was in the past, Guang Juanru would not have been willing, even though he was Duke Long Yu's junior brother. The main reason he was unwilling was because Long Xiaojie's setback in her relationship became the biggest joke in the immortal world. Just as she was about to marry, her man was snatched away by another woman. To put it bluntly, her reputation was not too good. Guang Juanru naturally did not want his grandson's reputation to be affected. However, the world was full of setbacks. Guang Juanru led a team to participate in the God Ruins Realm gathering, but the entire team was annihilated. Originally, all the sects were in similar situations, so it was not a loss of face for Hidden Dragon Manor. However, the key was that his background in the sect was not deep, because the direct descendants of Hidden Dragon Manor all had the surname Long, and he was an external elder. Thus, there were people who wanted to use this matter to mess with him. At this time, Long Yu was worried about Long Xiaojie's marriage. Although he knew that his granddaughter was still pure, there were all kinds of rumors going around. His granddaughter had actually become a used shoe, causing all the young geniuses who were interested to avoid Long Xiaojie like a snake or a scorpion. There were great talents who wanted to play around, but if he really wanted to marry her, everyone would think that it was a joke and they would all tactfully refuse. Duke Long Yu was enraged. He naturally couldn't let his granddaughter become someone else's plaything. Coincidentally, his junior martial brother was asking for help at this time. He immediately remembered that his junior martial brother's grandson was a firm pursuer of his granddaughter. In the past he couldn't ask his junior martial brother for help, but now. Therefore, Duke Long Yu hinted vaguely to see if they could get married. At this point, Guang Juanru couldn't refuse anymore. He knew that if something happened to him, his grandson's future would be bleak. Sometimes, reputation was not as important as one's life. Thus, no matter how he felt, he still agreed happily on the surface. He was straightforward, but Duke Long Yu was even more straightforward. He immediately used all the connections he could and successfully helped his junior brother overcome this obstacle. This was why the two old guys took the lead and match-made the two youngsters. This was really a painstaking effort. After Guang Yanzu received his grandfather's hint, he immediately smiled at Long Xiaojie. "Xiaojie, why bother with a woman like that? Who doesn't know that she used Wan Boxing to run amok in the immortal world? Don't worry. Someone will take care of her sooner or later." Long Xiaojie looked at him indifferently as if she was looking at a stranger. She unintentionally glanced at her grandfather who was frowning and looking at her. She immediately squeezed out a smile and replied to Guang Yanzu, "N." Guang Yanzu's joy was written all over his face. He pointed at the beautiful scenery of the mountains and rivers below and chattered endlessly. Long Xiaojie cooperated with him with a forced smile and nodded continuously. She was a man of few words and refused to give a complete sentence to Guang Yanzu. Guang Yanzu didn't mind. Although his grandfather Guang Juanru also had a smile on his face, it was a little unnatural. Some were happy and some were sad. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu had forgotten all his worries. He sat cross-legged on the back of the cloud rock with a smug smile on his face. His shoulders trembled as he laughed. From time to time, he waved his hand and shouted at Wei Chuanqiu who was chasing after him, "Bat King Wei! Faster, faster, we'll catch up soon." One in front and one behind, one green and one white, two streams of light cut through the sky. The surrounding clouds disappeared in an instant. It had to be said that carrying a person was indeed a burden in a competition of pure speed. However, Wei Chuanqiu was still clearly at a disadvantage. From the beginning they were flying shoulder to shoulder. Now they were half a body lower. Now there was a distance of nearly 100 meters between them. However, Big Bat's eyes had turned red. Clearly he was very competitive and his eyes were bloodshot. No one knew when it started, but there were more and more streams of light coming and going in the surroundings. All the immortal cultivators that were tearing through the sky were shocked by this world-shocking speed, and all of them stopped in midair as they watched the azure and white streaks of light chase after each other. From time to time, the exclamations of White Cloud Mountain Master and Green-Winged Bat King resounded in the air. What attracted everyone's attention the most was still Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting on the back of the Cloud Rock, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws at Wei Chuanqiu. After all, the celestial realm was so big. There weren't many people who could recognize him, Yu Qianqiu. The frequency at which the flowing lights of various colors appeared became more and more frequent. Yun Peng, who had been flying quickly in front of him, was shocked when he came into contact with the surprised and shocked gazes. Only then did he realize that he, the master of White Cloud Mountain, had become someone else's mount. If no one saw it, it wouldn't matter. But what was worse was that so many people saw it. That heart of the Cloud Rock. It instantly became cold. He, who had always been arrogant, for the first time, his eyes became evasive and unconfident. He didn't dare to look at everyone's shocked eyes. Due to his absent-mindedness, his speed started to slow down. From the increasing number of people appearing in the surroundings, he could determine that they weren't far from Illusionary Immortal City. The closer they got to Illusionary Immortal City, the more people would appear. Bat King Wei. Quick, we're close. Yu Qianqiu excitedly waved his arms. He didn't expect Wei Chuanqiu's potential to be so great. He was actually catching up faster and faster. In reality, this was just his misperception. He was sitting on the Cloud Rock and the Cloud Rock's speed was gradually slowing down. He just couldn't feel it. But to a pursuer like Wei Chuanqiu, he could clearly feel it. Wei Chuanqiu looked around and was instantly overjoyed. Wei Chuanqiu was very clear about the Cloud Rock's character. The Cloud Rock was arrogant and treasured its feathers. How could it be someone else's mount? From the moment Yu Qianqiu landed on his back, Wei Chuanqiu knew that the Cloud Rock was definitely going to lose. Now that he saw it, it was just as he expected. He had fallen for his trap. The gap between the two was getting smaller. 50 meters, 30 meters, 10 meters. Yu Qianqiu jumped up excitedly. He waved his arms and shouted, Bat King Wei is catching up. Quick. All right. Wei Chuanqiu shouted. The two finally returned to a situation where they were flying side by side. After a short stalemate, Wei Chuanqiu's figure slowly moved forward. He laughed sinisterly and gradually shook off the Cloud Rock. In the end, the Cloud Rock was the one chasing him. At this moment, the Cloud Rock didn't seem to see this scene. His sharp and spirited eyes were somewhat slack as he flew numbly. His arrogant heart was ruthlessly trampled on. He didn't know what was going on. Why did he agree to let Yu Qianqiu ride on his back? But it also felt like he was the one who wanted to compete with Wei Chuanqiu. Actually, the reason was very simple. It was because he saw an old friend that he hadn't seen for 10,000 years. He didn't expect that Wei Chuanqiu was still alive, so he was too excited. However, he was also a person with a cold face but a warm heart. He was used to using actions to express himself. In his heart, continuing the competition from 10,000 years ago was the best greeting gift. Wei Chuanqiu's sinister laughter as he brushed past caused the excited Yu Qianqiu to be slightly startled. He sensed that something was wrong. Furthermore, he finally sensed that Yun Peng's speed was gradually slowing down. Looking at the surprised gazes from all around him, he seemed to have guessed something. Damn it. Don't vent your anger on me when you lose. Yu Qianqiu coughed and sat down cross-legged. He no longer cheered for Wei Chuanqiu. Instead, he heavily patted Yun Peng and said, Senior Yun, Bat King Wei has already overtaken you when you weren't paying attention. Yun Peng suddenly woke up from his daze. Hearing the sinister laughter that came from 100 meters away, he immediately understood everything. He immediately shouted angrily, Wei Chuanqiu, you dare to scheme against me. Bullsh*T. If you want to act shamelessly, then say it clearly. If you bet, then you have to accept your loss. Don't play this game. Wei Chuanqiu's voice came from the front. Yun Peng's eyes suddenly burst with a bright light. Without saying anything, his flying speed exploded. He chased after the stars and the moon as he bit towards Wei Chuanqiu. He had already thought it through. Since he had already lost face, he could not let Wei Chuanqiu's scheme succeed. The distance between the two sides immediately began to slowly close. Wei Chuanqiu immediately felt the pressure. In his heart, he cursed Yu Qianqiu for blindly interfering. If he let Yun Peng become stupid for a while longer, then he would definitely win. The two of them instantly went all out. Their flashing speed caused a burst of exclamations in the air. In Chu Tian's eyes, a vast and boundless sea of clouds appeared. There were countless streaks of light rising and falling in the clouds. Because of this, the two of them became even more fierce. Yun Peng was slowly catching up with an unbelievable speed, but in the end he was still a bit late. In an instant, the two of them rushed into the sky above the vast sea of clouds. The streaks of light scattered to the sides in shock. Wei Chuanxiu, who was leading by nearly 10 meters, suddenly changed his direction. He directly turned and soared into the sky. In the air, he exploded into a cloud of green mist. Yun Peng followed closely behind. In a flash of white light he also appeared. Yu Qianqiu, who had been thrown far away by the inertia, quickly flew towards the two of them. Chapter 858. Above the vast sea of clouds, all kinds of flowing lights appeared and hovered in the air to observe. Green-winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord, these two titles were constantly being whispered. The two people everyone was talking about were hovering in the air, facing each other. Yun Peng's expression was originally gloomy, but when he heard people talking about when he became that brat's mount, he immediately shouted angrily, "Wei Chuanqiu, why do you want to harm me?" As expected, he exploded. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue and quietly retreated a little to avoid being implicated. Wei Chuanqiu asked with a face full of suspicion, "Yun Peng, is there something wrong with your brain? Why don't you tell me when I have harmed you?" Yun Peng choked. He couldn't say that he had become someone else's mount. Seeing this, Wei Chuanqiu coldly snorted and said, "If you lose, then admit defeat honestly. Don't find all kinds of excuses. If you refuse to admit defeat, I can't do anything to you. Say it yourself. Do you admit defeat or not?" Yun Peng's eyes were like cold lightning, staring straight at Wei Chuanqiu. Wei Chuanqiu couldn't help but feel guilty. He immediately waved his hand and said, "If you don't admit defeat, then forget it. I won't force you, just pretend that nothing happened." Then he shouted to Yu Qianqiu, "Let's go." He turned into a flowing light and flew towards the mountains of clouds and the sea of fog below. Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He looked at Yun Peng and acted as if he didn't know anything. He chased after Wei Chuanqiu. The two of them passed through the misty clouds one after another, and the view before them suddenly became clear. Below the clouds, there were many strange mountains like stars in a chessboard. On top of every mountain, there were houses of different styles. Some were tall buildings, some were courtyards, some were green tiles and red walls, and some were resplendent in gold and jade. In the middle of the mountains there was a huge square, crowded with people. It was very lively. It was very similar to what Yu Qianqiu saw in the Hundred Flowers Valley. It was filled with stalls of small merchants and peddlers. The perimeter of the square began to spread out with many winding main roads, leading in all directions. The winding main roads branched out into many branches, leading to every mountain. Seen from the air, the main and branch roads that wound between the mountains looked like thick and thin gray ribbons, intertwining like a labyrinth, dazzling the eyes. There was an endless stream of people on the grayish-white ribbon, and there were people flying across the sky from time to time. It was very lively. The two of them stopped in the air below the clouds and looked down with different expressions. Wei Chuanqiu sighed with emotion. After 10,000 years, he saw the prosperity of the illusory immortal city again. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu looked around at the various buildings on top of the mountain and asked blankly, could this be the hallucinatory immortal city? He felt that it was different from what he had imagined, and he couldn't tell what was hallucinatory about it. Where else could it be if not the illusory immortal city? Wei Chuanqiu was startled as she spoke. She turned around and sized him up suspiciously. Could it be that you've never been to the illusory immortal city before? Yu Qianqiu replied casually, what's so strange about that? I've always been concentrating on cultivating and haven't come out to gain experience. It's very normal that I haven't been to the illusory immortal city before. You're so cunning and despicable before coming out to gain experience. What would you be like if you came out to gain experience? Wei Chuanqiu had a face of disbelief. She noticed that she couldn't tell if Yu Qianqiu was speaking the truth or not from his face. Her small eyes were filled with puzzlement as she asked, what exactly do you want to do here? Could it be that you want to buy or sell something? No. Yu Qianqiu turned his head to look at the mountains below. He frowned and said, Bat King Wei, where is the Merchant Alliance? Wei Chuanqiu pointed at the tallest mountain below and pointed at the magnificent buildings on the mountain. That's the Merchant Alliance. Why are you looking for it? Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up slightly. He rubbed his hands and said, nothing much, just registering a Merchant Alliance. Wei Chuanxiu's expression froze. He sized up Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. You're not joking, are you? Or did I hear wrongly? You want to register a merchant alliance? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and asked, is there a problem? Wei Chuanxiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're just a soul formation stage itinerant cultivator, registering a merchant alliance? Let's not talk about the large amount of spirit stones needed to register. A merchant alliance isn't something that one person can play with. Be careful that you'll be eaten up by others. I want to know what you do for a living. If someone wants to eat me up, you go and beat them up. Yu Qianqiu threw down a sentence disapprovingly, then directly flew towards the grandest building. Wei Chuanxiu was stunned on the spot. He was speechless for a long time. What's your relationship with this kid? A question suddenly came from behind. Wei Chuanxiu turned around to look at Yun Peng. Actually, he didn't need to turn around to know it was Yun Peng. He smiled bitterly. It's a long story, I'm just unlucky. You should go back to your Baiyun mountain. This kid looks like a troublemaker no matter how I look at him, don't get involved. Yun Peng paused, a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. He then said expressionlessly, do you think I'm like you, always slacking off? I'm willing to admit defeat, I will abide by the bet from back then. You? Wei Chuanxiu suddenly turned around, waved his sleeves and sighed. Why do you have to do this? You and I both know that was just a joke back then, you and I were competitive, it can't be taken seriously. It's just 10 years, it's no big deal. Yun Peng said indifferently. Back then, the two of them were proud of their speed because of a disagreement they made a bet, both of them competing in speed. The bet was that the loser would run for 10 years for the winner. At that time they competed many times but they were evenly matched, no one could win. Now that Wei Chuanxiu had slacked off and won, whether the bet was valid or not depended on both of them. The two of them floated in the air, extremely conspicuous. Wei Chuanxiu looked wretched, his body was thin, and his sleeves were strangely big, while Yun Peng's aura was extraordinary. The two of them, one green and one white, formed a clear contrast. The passers-by would size up the two of them from time to time. Those who knew them were in awe, those who didn't seem to be watching a joke. After a moment of silence, Yun Peng stared at the mountain peak where Yu Qianqiu flew to, and said lightly, your little friend seems to be in some trouble. Before he finished speaking, Wei Chuanxiu had already flashed over, followed by Yun Peng. Yu Qianqiu, who was blocked outside the main hall, looked at the two golden-robed men at the door, feeling depressed. The reason why they didn't let him in was because the guards told him that this place was the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, and only the Chamber of Commerce Alliance matters were handled, other unrelated people were not allowed to trespass. Yu Qianqiu nodded and bowed, telling them that he was here to register a Chamber of Commerce, but they told him that registering a Chamber of Commerce required a referral from another Chamber of Commerce, otherwise he would not be allowed in. Yu Qianqiu had never heard of this rule and thought that the two guards were purposely making things difficult for him, but in the end he was very understanding and took out 2 storage bags with a smile, and secretly stuffed them into the hands of the two, so that they could make things convenient for him. The 2 guards were dumbfounded. It was the first time they had seen such an open bribe. It was no different from harming them. If they were found out, they would be in trouble. The 2 of them were furious, as if they had caught a hot potato. They could not wait to throw away the storage bags that Yu Qianqiu stuffed into them, and gave a serious warning. Is it too little? Motherf ***. Even a guard's appetite is so big. Yu Qianqiu looked gloomy as he turned around to pick up the 2 storage bags. Coincidentally, Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng landed in front of him. Wei Chuanxiu's gaze swept over the 2 guards, asking suspiciously, what did you stuff into them? Yu Qianqiu lowered his voice and mocked, their appetite is too big, there are 10 divine-grade spirit stones in each storage bag. It seems they think it's too little, not letting me register. Bribing in public? Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng's faces twitched. The former asked with difficulty, why did you give them spirit stones? Don't tell me you want to barge in without a referral from another Chamber of Commerce. Yu Qianqiu blanked for a moment. Do I really need a referral from another Chamber of Commerce to register? This is the rule of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, mainly to prevent people with unknown origins from causing trouble, don't you know? Wei Chuanxiu weakly raised his hand to his forehead. The sharp light in Yun Peng's eyes receded, his eyelids drooping slightly as he maintained his silence. Yu Qianqiu turned around to look at the open doors, muttering under his breath, damn it! There's such a lousy rule, why haven't I heard of it before? Who should I look for a referral? Pondering for a moment, his eyes lit up, asking, Bat King Wei Wangu Tong should have a business here, right? Do you know where it is? Wei Chuanxiu frowned, asking suspiciously, The immortal world's #1 Chamber of Commerce, Jianghu Tong? Are you familiar with Jianghu Tong? For a referral like this, if one doesn't have a good understanding of the other party's background, one wouldn't help, it might even be risky. Without old man Wanbo's approval, no one would dare to help Jianghu Tong. Are you sure Jianghu Tong is useful? I'll give it a try. Yu Qianqiu looked around asking, which mountain is Jianghu Tong on? At this time Yun Peng, who had been silent all this time, suddenly pointed to a mountain not far away, over there. Yu Qianqiu took the opportunity to look at the gray buildings on the opposite side of the mountain. Nodding his head, he put away the 2 storage bags in his hands and flew off in a flicker. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng exchanged a glance, then followed after Yu Qianqiu. Both of them were curious whether Yu Qianqiu was really that capable, choosing the #1 sect in the immortal world, Jianghu Tong, out of all people. The 3 of them landed in front of the gray hall on the opposite side. This place was obviously livelier than the Commerce Alliance's area, with people walking in and out of the hall. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng followed behind Yu Qianqiu. More importantly, the 2 of them standing together was too eye-catching, immediately attracting the attention of many people. Elder Wang Yi, who was sitting behind the curtains in the side hall, stood up and walked out in large strides. From afar, he cupped his fists towards Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. So it's the Green-Winged Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Chieftain, sorry for the disrespect. These 2 people's names did have some influence in the immortal world. Everyone in the hall stopped to look at them. Wei Chuanqiu chuckled, so it's Gia. Are you in charge of this place now? Both sides were obviously familiar with each other. I'm ashamed. I'm indebted to the sect master's kindness. Wang Yi said a few polite words. His gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, who was flanking Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng. He cupped his fists in a somewhat surprised manner and said, Honored sir, looks very unfamiliar. May I know who you are? Chapter 859. He clearly misunderstood. Not being able to see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was one reason, but the most important reason was that Yu Qianqiu had Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng following behind him. These 2 followers were more powerful, and ordinary people couldn't afford to use them. I'm no expert. Yu Qianqiu smiled self-deprecatingly and cupped his hands. I'm Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu. Wang Yi was startled. He felt that the name sounded familiar, so he asked tentatively, You're the Yu Qianqiu who participated in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm? Yu Qianqiu was also startled by him. He calmed himself down and said, I did participate in the gathering of the God Ruin Realm, is there a problem? He thought that Wan Ling and the others wouldn't spread the news that he was an immortal emperor's secret agent everywhere. He's Yu Qianqiu, so it's him. Whispers immediately came from the hall, and everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu looked around blankly as if he didn't think that he had already become so famous. Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng looked at each other speechlessly. They didn't know where Yu Qianqiu came from. How could so many people know him? This didn't match the identity of a spirit-severing rogue cultivator. The 2 of them didn't know that the people in the hall were even more confused about them. Why would early immortal Emperor Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng hang out with a mere spirit-severing rogue cultivator? After confirming that the person in front of him was indeed Yu Qianqiu, Wang Yi immediately looked at him in a new light. He didn't know what was going on between Yu Qianqiu and Jianghu Tong, but he heard about Wan Ling holding Yu Qianqiu's hand in public. Wan Ling was deeply doted on by Wan Bushing. Wang Yi had to give face to Wan Ling's lover. He immediately cupped his hands towards the 3 of them and said, It's rare for 3 esteemed guests to come, please come in. The 3 of them didn't stand on ceremony and followed him to the room on the left of the hall. After sitting down, Wang Yi asked with a smile, I don't want to make a deal, I just have a request. I want to register a merchant association with the Alliance, but I need to be recommended by another merchant association. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your merchant association to be my referral. I want to register a Chamber of Commerce in the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, but I need a referral from another Chamber of Commerce. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble your Chamber of Commerce to be my referral. The smile on Wang Yi's face froze for a moment, then he laughed it off and said perfunctorily, I can't make the decision on this. This matter must be approved by our sect leader. Yu Qianqiu didn't have the time to beat around the bush with him. There was a big mess waiting for the Chamber of Commerce to be established, so he bluntly said, I don't need you to make the decision. Please send a message to your Chamber of Commerce's sect master. He will tell you what to do. Yu Qianqiu didn't have the time to beat around the bush. There was a big mess waiting for the establishment of the Merchant Association, so he said bluntly, You don't need to make a decision. Please send a message to the master of your merchant association. He will tell you what to do. Wang Yi couldn't keep his smile. Even Wan Ling wouldn't talk to an elder like him. If it weren't for Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng sitting here, he would have sent them away. The faint smile on Yu Qianqiu's face didn't diminish. He stood up and slowly walked in front of Wang Yi. He said word by word, I don't want to have any conflict with you, but I don't have time to beat around the bush. I advise you to pass on my words to Wan Bushing as soon as possible. He naturally knows what to do. If you delay things, I'm afraid Wan Bushing won't forgive you. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng looked at each other. They didn't know what was wrong with Yu Qianqiu. He actually dared to say such words. However, to their surprise, Yu Qianqiu's body actually faintly emanated the aura of a superior. He was like a completely different person compared to before. Insolent. Wan Gui's hair and beard stood on end as he barked, the name of our merchant association's master is not something you can call out. Yu Qianqiu's gaze turned cold. He casually took out the profound purple token and raised it up. My words have offended you, Elder Wan, please quell your anger. Since Elder Wan is unwilling to help me contact your merchant association's master, then please help me pass my words to Wan Ling. When she gave me this token, she said that I can use this token to look for her if I need anything. Wan Gui suppressed his anger the moment he saw the token. This token represented Wan Gu Tong's reputation. It couldn't be easily damaged. He snatched the token from Wan Gui's hand, exasperated. Wait a moment. He turned around and left. Wei Chuanqiu stood up and circled around Yu Qianqiu twice. Then he clicked his tongue and said, Where did you come from? A profound zither token shouldn't be something that someone of your cultivation level can obtain, right? How would I know? Someone forcefully gave it to me. Yu Qianqiu shrugged innocently. Don't give me that. Wei Chuanqiu rolled his eyes. Tell me honestly, who is the Wan Ling who gave you the token? She must be a woman, right? Yun Peng at the side chimed in. I heard she's Wan Bushing's precious granddaughter. Wan Bushing dotes on her a lot. She wasn't born before you went into seclusion. Wei Chuanqiu made a long O sound, an ambiguous smile hanging on his face. Not bad, brat. You actually got together with Wan Bushing's precious granddaughter. Amazing. Admirable. What kind of person do you take me for? Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully. Not long after the two of them messed around, Wang Yi hurried in, slightly fearful as he bowed to Yu Qianqiu. I've offended you just now, please forgive me. The sect leader has personally instructed me to do my best to cooperate with you. Before this, he had thought that Yu Qianqiu was someone who relied on Wan Ling to live off a woman. After contacting Wan Ling, he relayed Yu Qianqiu's words to her, and Wan Ling nervously asked him to wait for a moment. What surprised Wang Yi was that not long after, Wan Bushing personally contacted him, warning him in an unusually serious tone. Promise him, try not to provoke him in the future, this person's background is very deep. Wan Bushing only gave him such a short sentence, but Wang Yi immediately sensed something unusual. Wan Gudong was already the #1 chamber of commerce in the immortal world, and from Wan Bushing's mouth, how could it be simple? In addition to Yu Qianqiu's previous words and actions, Wang Yi was a little shocked, faintly suspecting that Yu Qianqiu had some connection with the Immortal Palace. Otherwise, how could Wan Bushing treat him so cautiously? But thinking about it, it didn't seem right. The Chamber of Commerce Alliance was originally controlled by the Immortal Palace. If Yu Qianqiu was from the Immortal Palace, why would he need Wan Gudong's recommendation? No matter how he thought about it, he couldn't figure out the reason, but he knew that this Yu Qianqiu was not someone he could afford to provoke. No wonder that Yu Qianqiu said that if he delayed things, Wan Bushing would not forgive him. Suspicion flashed across Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng's eyes. The change in Wang Yi's attitude was too big. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he received the token from Wang Yi. There's no time to lose, then I'll have to trouble Elder Wan to accompany me to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. I dare not, please. Wang Yi made an inviting gesture. The group of four immediately left the Great Hall, flying directly to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, landing outside the Great Hall. Wan Gui walked briskly to the Great Hall entrance, taking out the Wan Gudong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token for the two guards to verify. The two guards looked at Yu Qianqiu in surprise, cursing him inwardly for being crazy. Since he could invite Wan Gudong as a referral, why was he still spouting nonsense? The four of them were immediately let in. After entering the Great Hall, Wang Yi had the three of them wait for a moment, while he himself held the Wan Gudong Chamber of Commerce Alliance's token, heading to the back hall without any obstructions. No one knew what Wang Yi did, but it took some time before he brought two golden-robed old men with him. Seeing Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng, The two of them cupped their fists in greeting, exchanging a few words of greeting. It was obvious they knew each other. One of them looked at Yu Qianqiu. "You're Yu Qianqiu? You want to register a chamber of commerce?" "That's right." Yu Qianqiu replied in a tone that was neither haughty nor humble. The two golden-robed old men exchanged a glance, then one of them asked with an expressionless face, "Do you want to register a chamber of commerce that deals in a single business or multiple businesses?" "Register as a multi-business merchant association," Yu Qianqiu said. The other party answered without hesitation, 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu knew he couldn't be stingy with this amount of money. Even though his heart ached, he still took out the two storage bracelets and handed them to the other party. That person counted the items carefully, then nodded to the other person. "Not bad." Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng exchanged a speechless look. This Yu Qianqiu looked like he only had a broken storage pouch hanging on his waist. They didn't expect him to be so rich. Wang Gui's expression tightened. 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones was not something an average soul formation rogue cultivator could take out. This person's background was indeed not simple. Little did Wang Gui know that this amount of money came from their eternal trade association. The other golden-robed old man immediately inquired, "The name of the Chamber of Commerce as well as the name of the Chamber of Commerce's president cum sect chief." Yu Qianqiu straightened his back, a sharp light flickered in his eyes as he replied in a sonorous voice, "The World Commerce Chamber." Yu Qianqiu. His voice reverberated in the great hall. Everyone present could hear the strangeness in his voice, but none of them thought too much about it. This kind of situation was very common. Which person who came to register a Chamber of Commerce did not have high expectations for the Chamber of Commerce they registered with. The two golden-robed old men each held a jade archive in their hands, and put it away after they were done. One of them announced, "The World Commerce Chamber's president cum sect chief, Yu Qianqiu, has completed the registration. The news will be announced to the whole immortal world tomorrow." With that said, the two golden-robed old men turned around and returned to the back hall. Wang Gui cupped his fists at Yu Qianqiu, congratulating him. "Congratulations Sect Chief Yu, congratulations to the World Commerce Chamber for establishing a branch in the immortal world." Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, then asked suspiciously, "The registration is completed just like that?" Wang Gui smiled, "Yes, the registration is completed." "Just like that, they charged me 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones?" Yu Qianqiu's face twitched uncontrollably. Wang Gui smiled wryly, thinking to himself, who would dare to reason with the immortal palace? He waved his hand, indicating that there was nothing to do here and they could not stay any longer. The group of four exited the Chamber of Commerce Chamber's Great Hall, walking to the hillside outside. The sun was shining brightly outside. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his face with both hands, but the pained expression on his face could not be erased. Wei Chuanqiu seemed to have regained his senses, staring at Yu Qianqiu with a cold sneer. "Feeling heartache, right? But you're really rich, using 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones to buy the position of sect chief, really extravagant. You're the only sect chief in the whole World Commerce Chamber, interesting." Chapter 860. Who says I'm a lone sect leader? Yu Qianqiu looked at Wei Chuanqiu indifferently, his eyes narrowed as he said slowly, "Don't I still have you?" Wei Chuanqiu was rendered speechless. Noticing that Yun Peng and Wang Gui were looking at him suspiciously, Wei Chuanqiu straightened his face. "Yu Qianqiu, don't drag that world commerce of yours into my head. I have no interest in your rundown world commerce that has nothing." Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to avoid the dazzling sunlight. Looking at the streams of light rising and falling in the sky, he slowly said, "Everything starts from nothing. What should have will eventually have. It's time for a lone sect leader like me to recruit some subordinates." As he was speaking, his eyes suddenly narrowed, looking at the buildings on the surrounding hills, asking in astonishment, "Other merchant houses have their own hills here, where is my territory?" Everyone exchanged a glance, then Wang Gui said as if it was a matter of course, "Naturally you have to buy it." "You have to buy it? Didn't you pay 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones just now?" Yu Qianqiu exclaimed in shock. "It's fine if you don't have to spend money." Wei Chuanqiu said with a mocking smile, "There is another method that the World Commerce Alliance allows. If you fancy a house's territory, you can use your name as the World Commerce House's sect leader to issue a challenge to that house's sect leader. According to the World Commerce Alliance's rules, both houses' sect leaders are allowed to challenge each other. As long as you win against the other house's sect leader, the other house has to give up their hill to you, then you don't have to spend a single spirit stone." "But this works?" Yu Qianqiu was rendered speechless for a moment, then asked with a lack of confidence, "How many spirit stones does it cost to buy a hill?" He admitted that he didn't have the ability to challenge other houses' sect leaders, thus he didn't count on saving money. Wei Chuanqiu was the first to answer, decisively raising a finger, 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones. If you're not willing to pay this amount and don't want to challenge other houses' sect leaders, then learn from them. As he spoke, he pointed at the huge plaza surrounded by mountains. There were countless stalls and vendors there. The meaning behind his words was obvious. He wanted Yu Qianqiu to learn from them and set up stalls there. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, "This old man is now the Grand Sect Master of the World Chamber of Commerce. How can I do something like setting up a stall? I think I'll leave this matter to you. I'll prepare the things to sell for you. There's no need for you to worry." Yun Peng and Wang Yi stared at Wei Chuanqiu at the same time. The latter's smile froze on his face. After a long while he said, "What? What? Why not? Because you promised to help me." Yu Qianqiu spoke with an indifferent expression. "If you don't want to set up a stall, I won't force you. Lend me 10 billion divine-grade spirit stones first, I'll repay you later." 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu was dumbfounded. "I don't see any hope of a lone sect master like you making money. What's the difference between lending you 10 billion spirit stones and throwing it away? I don't even have enough spirit stones for my own use. I can consider giving you 1 or 200 million spirit stones for free, 10 billion is out of the question." Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He had said it casually, but from the other side's words, it seemed like he could really take out 10 billion spirit stones. He coughed lightly. "For an expert like you, taking out 10 or 20 billion spirit stones shouldn't be a problem. As for my ability to repay you, you don't need to worry about it. Think about it, I can take out 50 billion spirit stones to register the World Chamber of Commerce. Do you think I'll be short of your 10 billion? Wei Chuanqiu shook his head like a rattled drum, refusing. "Since you're so rich, why are you thinking about me? I haven't had any income for many years, living off my savings. If you want to borrow money, find someone else. For example, their Wan Gutong is very rich, don't you have a close relationship with them?" His finger pointed at Wang Yi. Wang Yi lowered his head and pretended he didn't hear anything, pretending he didn't know anything. "This matter has nothing to do with me." Yu Qianqiu glanced at him. He wouldn't do something like reaching out to Wan Gutong for money again. As the saying goes, even a rabbit will bite when it's cornered. He couldn't keep trying to take advantage of the other party. If he pushed the other party into a corner, he would be the one in trouble. This kind of stupid thing couldn't be done. "Way back, King, you promised to help me." Yu Qianqiu emphasized this point once again. Wei Chuanqiu immediately protested. "It's true that I promised to help you, but I can't possibly take out my savings to play with you. Look at what you've done. You actually spent 50 billion to buy a lone sect leader, your brain. I'm not going to play along with you, and I can't afford to, because I'm not as extravagant as you." Wang Yi was pondering the relationship between Wei Chuanqiu, Wang Yi, and Yu Qianqiu, whereas Yun Peng was silently observing from the side. He too was pondering what was going on between Wei Chuanqiu and Yu Qianqiu. A person who could casually take out 50 billion divine-grade spirit stones and still dared to pester Wei Chuanqiu endlessly, no one would take him as an ordinary soul formation rogue cultivator. "Lend me 10 billion, I'll return you 15 billion a year later," Yu Qianqiu stated nonchalantly. Yun Peng and Wang Yi exchanged a surprised glance. This interest was really high, a little too high. "I don't. Wei Chuanqiu's refusal was stuck in his throat, the mustache above his lips curled up, and a hint of melancholy flickered in his eyes as he asked in a doubtful tone, "Are you sure you'll return me 15 billion a year later if I lend you 10 billion? This high profit made him feel conflicted. Yu Qianqiu smiled as he untied the storage bag at his waist, handing it over to Wei Chuanqiu. "I won't force you, take a look at the things inside before you decide if you want to lend them to me." Wei Chuanqiu received the storage bag suspiciously, and after a brief inspection, his eyes widened in shock as he swiftly took inventory of the things inside. There was a big pile of immortal herbs inside, each one of them was worth 100 million spirit stones. There were at least 100 billion inside the storage bag. Wei Chuanqiu swallowed with difficulty, raising his head. "These?" Yu Qianqiu immediately waved his hand, cutting Wei Chuanqiu off, pulling the storage bag back with a smile. "It's enough that you've seen it, don't spout nonsense. I only have one question for you, are you going to lend it to me or not?" In fact, he could easily take out some of these immortal herbs to exchange for 10 billion spirit stones, but he didn't want to reveal the fact that he had a large amount of immortal herbs in his possession. The reason why he registered the world commerce firm in the immortal world was similar to money laundering. He needed a platform to launder his name. The world commerce firm was doing business normally, so it was normal for it to have immortal herbs for sale. No one could say anything about it. It wasn't that he didn't have any other way besides borrowing money from Wei Chuanqiu, but he needed an expert by his side to protect and escort him. Borrowing 10 billion spirit stones for a year and paying 5 billion spirit stones in interest, it wasn't like he had too much money to spend. The key was to bind his interest with Wei Chuanqiu and pull him onto the pirate ship together. Relying on words and threats wasn't a long-term solution. "I'll lend it to you." Wei Chuanqiu agreed in an unusually decisive manner, and quickly took out a storage bracelet. Before handing it over to Yu Qianqiu, he didn't forget to warn him, "I'll say the ugly words first. If you dare to lie to me, don't blame me for falling out with you." Yun Peng and Wang Yi looked at each other, not knowing why Wei Chuanqiu's attitude had changed so completely, but it was definitely related to what Yu Qianqiu had shown him. It was also because of this that the items in the storage bracelet were very attractive to the two of them, but looking at Yu Qianqiu's intentions, it seemed like he didn't want a third party to know about it, so the two of them could only suppress their curiosity. "My character is the best guarantee." Yu Qianqiu took the storage bracelet and counted it as he praised himself. The number wasn't bad, there wasn't a piece more or less. He wore the storage bracelet on his wrist in satisfaction, his eyes already sweeping across the surrounding mountains, as if he was choosing a mountain. However, after a while he frowned. He discovered that all the places he could see were occupied by people. This area of mountains surrounded the square, it should be the most prosperous area. His gaze paused for a moment when it landed on Wan Gutong's mountain peak, then he pointed in a circle and said, "Are the sects that occupy this mountain peak all the big sects in the immortal world?" "That's right, the top-ranked sects in the immortal world are all gathered in this area. The further you go, the weaker the sects become. For example, the world commerce firm that you registered can't even be considered a beginner. I'm afraid it can only be in the outermost area. However, if you become strong enough in the future, you'll have a chance to stand at the front," Wei Chuanqiu explained seriously. There was no other way. He had already invested a large sum of money, so he naturally hoped that Yu Qianqiu could earn a lot of money as soon as possible, and then return it to him, allowing him to make a fortune as well. "Looks like I can only find a mountain to make do with first, and raise the banner of the world commerce firm here. Let's go. Let's go pick a place." Yu Qianqiu called out to Wei Bat King and left, while the other two followed on their own initiative. There was no dense cloud covering the sky inside Hallucination Immortal City. It was clear that this place was also covered by a large array. Although it was difficult to spy on the situation below from high up in the sky, it was different from the protective array that Yu Qianqiu had seen in the human world. This place could be entered and exited at will without any obstacles. The group of four flew around the periphery of Hallucination Immortal City. There were many empty mountains at the periphery of the large array, but none of them satisfied Yu Qianqiu. However, places with good mountains and water had already been picked by others. In the end, they had no choice but to pick a high mountain with a waterfall. Once they landed, a golden-robed man immediately appeared and greeted them warmly. His attitude was clearly different from the other people from the Immortal Palace. After Wei Chuanqiu's secret introduction, Yu Qianqiu understood that there was actually a golden-robed man squatting on every empty mountain in Hallucination Immortal City. These people were mostly people who didn't have much power in the Immortal Palace, so it seemed like they were exiled here. They could only return after selling the mountain and completing the mission. Otherwise, they would have to keep squatting on the mountain. Therefore, to these people like Yu Qianqiu who picked the mountain was their savior. Since they had already decided to buy it, and there was no price to negotiate, Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. He simply and straightforwardly made a deal with the golden-robed man, buying this high mountain with a waterfall as the territory for the world commerce firm to open. Chapter 861. This mountain couldn't be considered very tall in the hallucinatory Immortal City, but compared to the surrounding mountains, it was still relatively tall. Standing at the top of the mountain, one could clearly see the situation of the surrounding mountains. However, there were very few trees on the entire mountain, and not a single tree could be seen. Large chunks of rocks were exposed. Looking around, the barren mountain seemed a little out of the ordinary. The only interesting thing was that there were tens of clear springs and ponds at the top of the mountain. The water converged into one, forming a waterfall on one side of the steep slope. Although the mountain was barren, it was still a bit interesting. Yu Qianqiu looked around with high spirits. Although the territory wasn't big, at least he had his own territory in the immortal world, and he wouldn't be homeless in the immortal world. After building it a little and pulling the people from the mortal world up, this would be everyone's starting point in the immortal world. Why did you choose this mountain? I think that mountain is pretty good. Wei Chuanxiu muttered and pointed into the distance. It was a lush and green mountain with towering ancient trees. Not only was it pleasing to the eye, it was also filled with vitality. Yu Qianqiu lowered his head and looked at the 6 to 7 meter diameter pool beside his feet. There was actually a school of small fish swimming around in it. He didn't know how they got to the top of this mountain. He pointed and a fist-sized crystal ball of water floated up from the pool. Inside it was a frightened and uneasy fish that was scurrying around. Bat King Wei, you don't understand. Doing business is all about feng shui. A place with water represents fortune. Especially this running water, it represents an unending stream of fortune. If we occupy this mountain, we will definitely be rolling in money in the future. Do you believe it? Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. The water ball landed in his palm, and the small fish inside became more and more anxious. Every time its head bumped against the water ball, it would create a ripple. Unfortunately, it was unable to break through the circular water screen. What does feng shui mean? Wei Chuanxiu was stunned. He looked at the other two with a questioning gaze. Yun Peng and Wang Yi also looked at each other, their faces full of doubt. It seemed like they had never heard of this before. Feng shui is the meaning of luck. Those who have feng shui will be able to do everything smoothly. This is a very profound spell and I only know a little about it. Yu Qianqiu casually bluffed. It was really difficult for him to explain anything. The water ball in his hand was thrown back into the pool, and it quietly melted into the water. The small fish scurried around for a while before hiding in the cracks of the rocks at the bottom of the pool, not daring to come out. The three of them looked at each other, feeling a little confused by what they were hearing. Wei Chuanxiu knew that Yu Qianqiu had some incredible tricks up his sleeves. Even though she didn't completely believe him, she still believed him a little. She probed, "Are you saying that as long as we occupy this mountain, we will be able to bring fortune?" "Of course." Yu Qianqiu's eyes flashed and he said indifferently, "But it still needs to be modified by me." After saying that, he leaped into the air and carefully looked at the gushing waterfall, preparing to make good use of it. The few of them didn't know what he was looking at, so they also came to take a look. After looking for a long time, they couldn't see anything. However, they saw that Yu Qianqiu had leaped to the front of the waterfall. He stretched out both of his palms from his sleeves and pressed them against the waterfall, causing the water to splash everywhere. No one knew what he was doing. After a while, the few of them finally saw some clues. They found that Yu Qianqiu was adjusting the mountain behind the waterfall. As the mountain changed, the waterfall that was flowing straight down stirred up large patches of white water. After a while, they saw that the water had stirred up a big Tian character. After making this character, Yu Qianqiu grasped the right amount. The speed at which his palms rose and fell increased, and a down character appeared once again. Not long after, the four huge words World Chamber of Commerce stood erect on the slightly slanted mountain with an awe-inspiring aura. Each word emitted a hua-hua sound of surging water. The different pitches produced by the four words seemed to be announcing to everyone that this was the World Chamber of Commerce. In an instant, the entire mountain became extraordinary. Wei Chuanxiu and the others looked at each other speechlessly. They found that after Yu Qianqiu's actions, this mountain really did have a bit of a treasure land of feng shui. Yu Qianqiu also flew into the air to look at it from all different angles. The corner of his mouth hooked into a smile. It seemed that he quite liked his masterpiece. When the Chamber of Commerce Alliance announced the newly established World Chamber of Commerce, it didn't attract much attention in the immortal world. What really made people remember this Chamber of Commerce was the mountain that the World Chamber of Commerce had transformed. First, some passers-by discovered it by chance. Then it spread from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100. In the end, everyone knew about it. The four characters World Chamber of Commerce, formed by the water, immediately became a spectacle in the illusory immortal city. Every day many people would come to watch. There were even many people who came from afar after hearing about it. They all marveled at this simple yet extraordinary masterpiece. There was no doubt that no matter how strong this newly established World Chamber of Commerce was, this masterpiece alone was enough to let everyone know that there was such a World Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world. It was a simple idea, but like a stroke of genius, it instantly made the World Chamber of Commerce's name known in the immortal world. Many small chambers of commerce even lamented why they didn't think of this in the first place. This was such a good opportunity to make their own Chamber of Commerce famous. Everyone sighed at themselves for letting go of such a good piece of territory. It should be known that many small chambers of commerce had been operating for many years, but were still unable to make their chamber of commerce famous. For example, the tiny Four Links Chamber of Commerce had been operating in the immortal world for many years. It was even the painstaking efforts of several generations of people in the immortal world. Yet, when they announced their name, most people in the immortal world didn't know of the existence of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know if they existed, so why would they do business with them? When doing business, the fame of the Chamber of Commerce often represented the amount of profit. There was no doubt about this. Everyone understood this. Look at the World Chamber of Commerce. They didn't even know when they would open for business, but their Chamber of Commerce was already famous. The reason was none other than the contribution of those few characters on the mountain. Those few characters were worth countless years of blood and sweat. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. Some people wanted nothing more than to bang their heads against the wall and die. The mountain was still the same mountain. It just had an owner and a few more characters on the mountain. Other than that, there were no other changes. There weren't even the most basic buildings. It was clear that the World Chamber of Commerce hadn't opened yet. Even so, Wei Chuanxiu had seen the changes in the past few days. They hadn't even started doing business, but their popularity was already booming. Once they opened for business, business would definitely not go wrong. The shifty-eyed Wei Chuanxiu had been wandering around the mountain with his hands behind his back for the past few days. He looked like he was patrolling the mountain. Yu Qianqiu didn't make him do hard labor, but he enjoyed it. He especially liked to wander around the side of the mountain with the characters. It was as if he wanted to tell everyone who came to watch that he was the owner of this mountain. It felt really good to receive the envious gazes of so many people. It seemed like this was the first time he had found this feeling after living for so many years. Although he knew that the owner of this mountain was Yu Qianqiu, he felt that he had spent 10 billion to have this popular territory appear. His contribution was definitely not small. It was only right for him to enjoy this bit of glory. He now had no doubts about Yu Qianqiu's Feng Shui treasure land. He had just occupied this territory and it immediately became a treasure land. The Feng Shui was too good, he would definitely be able to make money in the future. However, the more he thought about it, the more conflicted he became. If business was booming in the immortal world, then he would be able to make a fortune. However, he would only receive 5 billion for the money he spent. Wasn't that too little? Wei Chuanxiu's beady eyes darted around, looking at Yu Qianqiu, who was also looking around the mountain. Yu Qianqiu had been thinking about how to use the current location to build this mountain, especially the dozens of clear springs and ponds. It would be a waste not to use them. Wang Ge had long returned to Wangu Tong. He had his own matters and couldn't always accompany them. Yun Peng, on the other hand, found a place to sit cross-legged on the mountain. He hadn't moved for the past few days, but he was constantly paying attention to Wei Chuanxiu's movements. Based on his understanding of Wei Chuanxiu, Yun Peng could vaguely guess that Wei Chuanxiu was up to no good. Yu Qianqiu, when do you plan to start work on this mountain? Wei Chuanxiu had slipped behind Yu Qianqiu without him noticing, asking with a smile. His concern was obvious on his face. Yu Qianqiu jumped on top of a large rock and looked around the mountain again. His gaze gradually became resolute, as if he had made up his mind. He nodded slowly. I'll find people to start work in the next few days. That's good, that's good. Such a good Feng Shui treasure land is really a waste. Cough cough. But Wei Chuanqiu's smile suddenly became serious. She said solemnly, it will definitely cost a lot of money to make the whole mountain look good. Have you prepared the money? Yu Qianqiu looked at him in surprise. Since when did Wei Chuanqiu become so concerned about him? He couldn't figure it out. Money is dead, but people are alive. Can a living person be stumped by money? Don't worry. I will think of a way. It's not that I want to scold you, but you're really too much. Didn't I promise to help you? Why do you have to think of other ways to help me? Wei Chuanqiu also jumped on top of the large rock, standing beside Yu Qianqiu. He looked around. If we really want to build this mountain to look good, I'm guessing we'll need to spend several 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. If it's not convenient for you, I can lend you some 1 billion more. Is that enough? Yu Qianqiu blanked for a second, looking at Wei Chuanqiu from head to toe with disbelief. It was as if he had heard something out of the Arabian Nights. He couldn't tell if he had heard wrong. Picking his ears, he asked suspiciously, did you just say you want to lend me another 1 billion divine-grade spirit stones? Chapter 862. Wei Chuanqiu waved his hand to stop him. Based on our relationship, you're treating me like an outsider. How about this? Before he finished speaking, he secretly glanced at Yun Peng, who was sitting cross-legged not far away, and then transmitted his voice in a low voice. I estimate that the immortal herbs in your storage bag are worth hundreds of billions. I gave you 10 billion before and now I'll give you another billion. It's almost a tenth of the price of the immortal herbs in your hands. How about this? You don't have to return the money in a hurry. Saving more money to develop the world commerce is the right way. Just let me take 10% of the world commerce's shares. I don't want any more. What do you think? If you agree, I'll give you another billion immediately. Yu Qianqiu leaned back slightly and sized him up. He could tell that this old bat was also a fellow who only cared about money. He coughed and said, "It's not appropriate to always take out your own capital. Forget it, I'll think of another way." "Don't." Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened. He stopped transmitting his voice and pretended to be angry. "Based on our relationship, there's no point in treating me like an outsider. Damn it. You were so stubborn when I wanted to borrow money from you. Now you're not treating me like an outsider." Yu Qianqiu shook his head. "I don't want to treat you like an outsider either. But you can see that my cultivation is shallow. If the world commerce is destroyed one day, you'll lose everything. I really don't want to harm you. Don't worry. Whoever wants to destroy the world commerce's business will have to go through me first." Wei Chuanqiu patted his chest and guaranteed righteously. Then he took out a storage bracelet that he had prepared before coming and stuffed it into Yu Qianqiu's hand. He said solemnly, "This is 1 billion. It's settled." Yun Peng, who had been staring at them, shook his head slightly and closed his eyes slowly. Yu Qianqiu looked at the bracelet in his hand and raised his brows. "This is not impossible. Old bat, I'll say the ugly words first. No matter how much money you invest, without my permission, you are not allowed to interfere with the world commerce's business. If you agree, then it's fine. If you don't, you can take the money back." "This?" Wei Chuanqiu hesitated for a moment. If he didn't care about anything, wouldn't he have the right to care after spending more than 10 billion? This was not a small amount of money. "Don't worry, I won't leave you out once we earn money. Just wait for your share," Yu Qianqiu added. If he didn't want to tie them down with benefits, he wouldn't want any outsiders to participate in World Chamber of Commerce's business. Wei Chuanqiu gritted her teeth and made up her mind. "I believe you. It's settled then." Upon hearing this, Yu Qianqiu immediately put away the storage bracelet and laughed. "Bat King Wei, you can rest assured. I guarantee that the money you get will be more than enough." Once the World Commerce Association became famous, many people naturally began to pay attention to who the sect master of the World Commerce Association was. On the wide square surrounded by mountains, it wasn't wrong to say that there were too many people and too many mouths. These days, the person who wasted the most of their mouths was the sect master of the World Commerce. Once 3 to 5 people met, they immediately started exchanging pointers. Someone asked the moment they met, "Have you heard? The sect master of the World Commerce Association is that Yu Qianqiu who killed all the disciples of Heartless Palace in the ruins of God." Another person immediately shook his head. "That's really strange. How could a mere soul formation stage loose cultivator take out 50 billion to register the World Commerce Association?" Someone at the side immediately interrupted. "He's not an ordinary soul formation stage expert. It's said that his background is very deep. I personally saw White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng become his mount. Go and take a look. Green Wing Bat King and White Cloud Mountain Lord are following behind him. He has 2 early-stage Immortal Emperor experts as his subordinates. Have you seen a soul formation loose cultivator like this?" In just a few days, the news of White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng becoming Yu Qianqiu's mount had also spread like wildfire in the immortal world. For a time, countless people were guessing and investigating Yu Qianqiu's background. This Yu Qianqiu's first appearance was related to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. However, after investigating the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, there was no way to investigate further. There was no other reason than that the current Four Links Chamber of Commerce was no longer something that ordinary people could afford to offend. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce had also become the focus of the entire immortal world. Immortal Palace External Affairs Great Commander Wu Xiong had taken a fancy to the daughter of Four Links Chamber of Commerce's President Mu Bing. After discussion and agreement between both parties, Great Commander Wu Xiong had already sent betrothal gifts. Both parties had set a wedding date for 3 months later. It was said that this marriage was formed because of the love at first sight between the male and female protagonists at the ruins of God Realm. Once this news was announced, the status of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce in the immortal world could no longer be described as rising with the tide. It was more appropriate to describe it as soaring. Countless loose cultivators and loose immortals trampled through the doors of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce, begging to join it. Many sects, big and small, even took the initiative to deliver business to the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Moreover, they were the kind that would rather suffer losses than take the initiative to give up profits. Some even made it clear that they wanted the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to make a fortune. Everyone was well aware of why this was the case. It was nothing more than a show of goodwill towards Wuxia, hoping to use this opportunity to improve their relationship. Under these circumstances, who would dare to rashly approach the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to inquire about Yu Qianzhou's information? Even if a few people of considerable status tried to inquire about it, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would refuse to answer any of their questions. They were unwilling to divulge any information about Yu Qianzhou's origins. In truth, no one in the Four Links Chamber of Commerce knew of Yu Qianzhou's origins. It was only because of a small misunderstanding during a recruitment that they mistakenly recruited Yu Qianzhou. It was also because of this misunderstanding that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's fate underwent an earth-shattering change. If it wasn't for Yu Qianzhou raising his hand and shouting, the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not have had the opportunity to organize enough people to go to the Divine Ruin Realm. They would also not have met Wuxia, and naturally the Four Links Chamber of Commerce would not exist today. When Yu Qianzhou learned of this news, he was sitting in the inner room of the hallucinatory Immortal City's everlasting Great Hall, chatting with Wang Ge. His main purpose was to ask Wang Ge to help him find people to build his territory. At the same time, he also learned from Wang Ge that Mu Tianjiao and Wuxia were going to marry. The two of them fell in love at first sight? Yu Qianzhou was stunned when he heard this. As the main character who had the chance to have an ambiguous relationship with Mu Tianjiao, he really did not see any signs of love at first sight between Wuxia and Mu Tianjiao. So no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand how these two people with such a huge disparity in status could get together. Wang Ge, who was sitting next to him, was also stunned when he saw his reaction. Then he suddenly came to a realization. He clapped his hands and laughed, saying, "That's right, I heard that your relationship with eldest Miss Mu is not bad. You even fought side by side in the Divine Ruins realm. I believe your relationship is not shallow. Now that eldest Miss Mu is about to marry Great Commander Wuxia, this relationship will definitely be of help to the World Chamber of Commerce in the future." "Ah, I actually hope so." Yu Qianzhou smiled politely, but he was a little worried in his stomach. Back then, Mu Tianjiao had abandoned her pride as a woman to confess her love to him, but he had rejected her. He did not know if she would bear a grudge against him. He had always been suspicious of a woman's tolerance in this aspect. If Mu Tianjiao wanted to show him some face and got married to Wuxia, then it would be troublesome. I hope that's not the case. Curse those two next door, Du Feng and Hui Yunlong, these two fellows are really useless. They made the first move and didn't even get that girl, causing this daddy here to be on tenterhooks. I'll curse you two when I get the chance. Yu Qianzhou thought to himself. The two of them chatted for a while longer before Yu Qianzhou bid farewell to Wang Ge. Exiting the Everlasting Connection branch's main hall, he left the hallucinatory Immortal City in a low-profile manner and disappeared after finding a more secluded place. The underground world opened up by the Eastern Holy Lands had already become the place where the various feudal lords squatted for a long period of time. Most of them had thrown the family matters to their disciples. After getting their share of the immortal world's divine grade spirit stones, the little bit of money in the mortal world was nothing to them. Who had the mood to fight over a few small amounts of money in the mortal world? All of them looked forward to the good days that Yu Qianzhou described to them in the immortal world. As a result, all of them took the initiative to guard the transmission array below the Holy Palace, to prevent it from being destroyed. One must know that this transmission array was the only link to the immortal world in everyone's hearts. They couldn't afford to damage it. Of course, gathering over 300 soul formation experts to guard this transmission array was indeed making a big fuss over a minor issue. In fact, as long as they stayed quiet in the mortal world, no one in the mortal world would be more ridiculous than them. To put it bluntly, everyone was waiting here in anticipation of Yu Qianzhou's return. They didn't want everyone to go to the immortal world and leave them behind. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. How many years had it been since someone had ascended to the immortal world? No one wanted to miss it. In the end, Yu Qianzhou didn't fool everyone. He kept his promise and came back. When he appeared in the transmission array he made up, people around him immediately exclaimed, "The torture envoy is back." Those who were leaning against the wall, squatting on the ground, or simply sitting on the ground all stood up. Pairs of eyes that had been waiting for a long time turned to look at him. Immediately, A wave of exclamations sounded. It's true that the torture envoy is back. Torture envoy, you're finally back. Yu Qianqiu almost jumped in fright when he appeared. A large group of people were squeezed in the passageway. It was a dense black mass. No matter how he looked at it, they looked like a group of refugees. Yu Qianqiu looked at them seriously and said, "What's going on? Why are you all hiding in this dark place? Did something happen in the mortal world?" Nongzhu flashed out of the crowd and looked him up and down. She said, "You really have been in the immortal world. When you speak, you don't even use the word cultivation world, but mortal world." As he spoke, he turned around and asked the crowd, "Brothers, this level is a little different from ours." The crowd immediately burst into laughter with a hint of expectation in their laughter. Yu Qianqiu looked at them and thought, well, nothing must have happened. I worried for nothing. Then he waved to the crowd and said, "Everyone be quiet. I have good news for you." Chapter 863. As soon as he said that, the laughter reverberating in the underground space stopped. Everyone held their breaths, revealing a faint expression of excitement and anticipation. Yu Qianqiu smiled faintly at the people in the tunnel. "I'm currently making preparations in the immortal world. The day we go to the immortal world to conquer the world is not far away. The countdown has already begun." "How long more?" Nongzhu asked excitedly. Actually, this was what everyone wanted to know as well. Yu Qianqiu smiled but didn't answer. He looked around the crowd and asked, "Is Sikongju here yet?" As soon as he said that, someone shouted from the back of the crowd. Sikongju immediately teleported in front of him and bowed, "Greetings, torture envoy." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "I've established a merchant association in the illusionary immortal city in the immortal world. It will be the starting point for everyone to establish a foothold in the immortal world. The name of this merchant association is World Merchant Association. Do you understand what I mean? World Chamber of Commerce." Whispers and whispers immediately sounded in the crowd. Sikongju suddenly raised his head. His tightly clenched fists were faintly trembling as he said respectfully, "Sikongju doesn't know what torture envoy's intention is. Please enlighten me." "Whether you really don't know or not, the reason why I named this merchant association the World Merchant Association is very simple. Firstly, it's to commemorate your master Yin Baikang. But do you know why I want to commemorate Yin Baikang?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly swept across the crowd as he said with a solemn expression, "I wouldn't know if I didn't make a trip to the immortal world. Cultivators like us, even if we go to the immortal world, we will still be vagrant cultivators with no one to rely on. The immortal world is filled with rich and powerful families. They rely on their strength to bully the weak. They are all ruthless fellows. Even if we go to the immortal world, we will still face many dangers. In the end, whether we can stand firm or not depends on whether we, the cultivators of the mortal world, are united or not. The reason why I named the Merchant Association the World Merchant Association is that I hope everyone can remember that Yin Baikang died fighting against the cultivators of the underworld. The people we will come into contact with in the future will definitely not only be from the immortal world, but also those from the underworld. In short, we, the cultivators of the mortal world, must unite. Once we are divided and our strength is scattered, only death will await us." Everyone instantly sank into silence. In fact, there was no need for Yu Qianqiu to say it. Everyone who had been tempered for a long time understood in their hearts that as long as there were people, there would be grudges. The more people there were, the more it was like this. Bullying the weak and fighting and killing were definitely unavoidable. Whether it was the cultivation world of the human world or the immortal world, it was the survival of the fittest. This kind of thing could only be faced bravely. It was impossible to hide even if one wanted to. Yunnan Tian, who was wearing a white cloak, walked out. He cupped his hands towards Yu Qianqiu and said, "You worry too much, torture master. We all know this and we have already discussed it. With our cultivation, even if we reach the immortal world where experts are as common as clouds, we definitely won't be enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. However, we are very confident in the disciplinary master and have already made up our minds to follow the disciplinary master to the end of our lives and conquer a place of our own in the immortal world. No matter what happens in the future, at least for now, none of us will allow a black sheep to appear among us. We will keep an eye on each other. If someone does something wrong to everyone, let alone the disciplinary master, even we won't let him go. It's good that you all understand." Yu Qianqiu looked around at the crowd and nodded. "If anyone does something wrong to me and everyone else, I promise to make him suffer a fate worse than death. But then again, everyone here is an overlord in the human world. I have no reason to order you around. When we have enough strength in the immortal world, we will give everyone a chance to establish our own power. As he said this, he casually took out a jade archive and handed it to Yunnan Tian, saying, I don't know much about the immortal world either. Here are some things I know about the immortal world. Take it and make a copy for everyone. Before we go to the immortal world, let's try to get a general understanding of the immortal world so that we don't know anything when the time comes. Also, make arrangements for the human world as soon as possible. I don't want any trouble to befall our headquarters in the human world after we go to the immortal world. All of you better restrain your own people. Don't meddle in the affairs of the human world anymore. Focus on your cultivation. If anyone's subordinates cause any trouble, I will make them pay for it. I won't hold back. Yes, disciplinary master. The crowd saluted in unison. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu from the side and sighed inwardly. That scum of the cultivation world back then had now become the true controller of the human world and the cultivation world. Moreover, he had begun to extend his influence to the immortal world. Things were indeed different now. Yu Qianqiu didn't say much. Everything that needed to be said was written in the Jade Archive. A white mist filled the underground space. When the white mist dissipated, Yu Qianqiu was nowhere to be seen. The quiet crowd immediately became restless again. They fought to be the first to copy the Jade Archive from Yunanshan's hands. The construction on the mountaintop of the hallucinatory Immortal City's World Chamber of Commerce was progressing very quickly. The magnificent building on the mountaintop was already taking shape. The contractor for this construction project was the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance, Chamber of Commerce. It was said that the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance had gathered all the skilled craftsmen in the immortal world in the field of construction. No matter how complicated or exquisite a building was, they could build it for you. Moreover, they were known for their perfect quality. They were very famous in the immortal world. Almost all the major sects in the immortal world had hired them to build important buildings. Of course, the cost was much higher than the others. The person in charge of this construction project was a hall master of the Pavilion of Divine Ordnance in the hallucinatory Immortal City. His name was Hisu. For the past few days, whenever Hisu saw Yu Qianqiu wandering around the mountaintop, he would get a headache. The main reason was that Yu Qianqiu was always trying to come up with creative ideas to add to the designs that had already been finalized. In truth, it would have been fine if Yu Qianqiu had said all of his ideas in one go. However, this fellow would always come up with new ideas, giving the Pavilion of Secrets a headache. One day Yu Qianqiu suddenly found Hisu and requested to raise the building's foundation by 1 floor. He wanted to turn the top floor into a platform. Then he wanted to add an octagonal flying beam roof that was half the size of the platform. The reason for this idea was that Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of creating a place on the top floor where he could bask in the sun during the day and watch the stars at night. Even if it was raining, he could still enjoy the scenery from a high vantage point. Hisu's expression twitched. He had the urge to slap Yu Qianqiu twice. The tallest building in the hallucinatory Immortal City was only 6 stories tall. However, Yu Qianqiu had forcibly increased the height of a 12-story building to 22 stories. Now he wanted to add another floor. No one in the entire immortal realm had ever seen such a tall building. Putting aside the difficulty of construction, the most important thing was whether this fellow would add a few more layers later on. Sect Master Yu, there's something I have to remind you of. Hisu did his best to maintain his composure. You keep increasing the height, and it's a huge test of the building's bearing capacity. If you insist on adding another floor, you'll have to replace all the bearing columns at the bottom. You'll have to use 32 pieces of iron Phoebe that are over 10,000 years old. What's the price of 32 pieces of iron Phoebe? Wei Chuanxiu, who was following behind, interjected nervously. How could he not be nervous? The building that was originally priced at 800 million had been raised to 1,800 million by Yu Qianqiu, and the extra money was coming out of his own pocket. It would be strange if he wasn't nervous. Bat King Wei, it's not ordinary iron Phoebe, but 32 pieces of iron Phoebe that are over 10,000 years old. Hisu solemnly reminded Yu Qianqiu, then added, each piece of 10,000-year-old iron redwood costs around 10 million divine grade spirit stones, so 32 pieces would cost 320 million divine grade spirit stones. Moreover, this kind of renovation will cost us a great deal of energy, so you must add another 500 million divine grade spirit stones for this renovation. Another 500 million? Wei Chuanqiu's eyes widened in shock. Bat King Wei, take out another 500 million. Yu Qianqiu reached out his hand disapprovingly. Wei Chuanqiu staggered several steps back, shaking his head in fear. I won't give you any more spirit stones, who knows when you'll be done with this again and again. I really don't have much spirit stones left, you've almost squeezed them dry, I really can't afford it anymore, think of another way. Why should I give up what's near at hand and seek what's far away? Yu Qianqiu immediately threw out the words that Wei Chuanqiu had strongly urged him to join them in the past, pulling Wei Chuanqiu back with a beaming smile. If you're worried, how about this? I'll use something as collateral, what do you think? Wei Chuanqiu shook off Yu Qianqiu's hand, groaning in pain as he scratched his head like a madman. When he was done venting, he said word by word to Yu Qianqiu, I'm warning you, this is definitely the last time, there won't be a next time. With that said, Wei Chuanqiu turned around and threw a storage bracelet to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu counted and found that the number was not bad. Waving the storage bracelet, he said to Wei Chuanqiu, Bat King Wei, don't worry, I promise you, this is definitely the last time. Shut up. Wei Chuanqiu's face twitched as he pointed a finger at Yu Qianqiu. Don't say the word promise to me again, count how many times you've said promise to me. With that, Wei Chuanqiu immediately left, angrily sitting behind Yun Peng in the distance, not looking at them anymore. Yu Qianqiu was stunned, he turned around to look at the magnificent building that was still under construction, and for the first time, he realized that he really shouldn't continue with the changes. He handed the storage bracelet in his hand to Hisu. This is the last time, just build it according to what I said just now. After counting the spirit stones, Hisu didn't say anything else as long as it was paid, everything else was not something he should be concerned about. He cupped his hands at Yu Qianqiu, then went back to make the arrangements. A month later, a magnificent building that stood at the peak of the mountain, with 23 floors and a height of more than 80 meters, finally appeared. Apart from the height of the mountain, this building was definitely the tallest building in the immortal realm. It was different from the other buildings in terms of beauty and grandeur, standing between the heavens and the earth, almost causing the entire immortal realm to gasp in awe. Chapter 864. The excitement caused by the words World Chamber of Commerce, written on the mountain had just subsided when World Chamber of Commerce's grand skyscraper appeared once more, attracting the attention of many in the world of immortals. Some people who had yet to see the waterfall couldn't help but run over to take a look when they heard of the grand skyscraper. Some people who had seen World Chamber of Commerce's waterfall were on their way back. When they heard the news, they immediately cursed the World Chamber of Commerce for being a troublemaker. But cursing was cursing, they turned around and rushed back to World Chamber of Commerce. In the end, the tourist craze this time was even greater than before. For a time, the air around World Chamber of Commerce was bustling with activity. Streams of light gathered from all directions and stopped in the air to watch, all of them marveling at the majesty and grandeur of the building. Little did they know that even Hisu and the others from the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets who had built this skyscraper had stopped and stared for a long time before leaving World Chamber of Commerce. They inwardly marveled at its grandeur, wondering if they had really built this building themselves. Hisu, who had been tormented by Yu Qianqiu all this time, no longer had a headache. Because he had never had the experience of building such a skyscraper, he had encountered many problems during the construction. Instead, some of Yu Qianqiu's advanced ideas had helped him resolve many of the problems. Sometimes Hisu even sighed inwardly. It was a pity that Yu Qianqiu hadn't joined the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. Otherwise, a master of construction would have risen in the world of immortals. Hisu also understood that with the completion of this skyscraper, his position in the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets would rise. His name would also spread throughout the world of immortals through this building. There was no doubt that it would bring great benefits to the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets in the future. At the top floor of the Jade-Tile Jade Pavilion, Wei Chuanqiu stood joyfully in front of the white jade railings at the edge. He looked at the world and sighed at the majesty of this building. He felt like he was standing on the shoulders of a giant that had never been surpassed before. It was a wonderful feeling. Previously, he had spent a huge sum of money to build it, and it had caused him great heartache. He had even ignored Yu Qianqiu for a while. Now, under the gazes of tens of thousands of people, he felt that Yu Qianqiu did not do anything wrong. Among the crowd watching from the air, there were people who wanted to personally land on this tall building to experience it. Who knew that before they could even get close, Wei Chuanqiu's gaze was like lightning as he suddenly stared at them. In a low and cold voice he shouted, "The world commerce has not opened yet. If anyone dares to trespass without permission, don't blame me, Wei Chuanqiu, for killing them." Immediately, some of the restless people did not dare to step forward. Everyone could only watch from afar. One must know that there was another person who had always been at odds with Wei Chuanqiu, and that was White Cloud Mountain Master Yun Peng, who was equally as famous as Wei Chuanqiu. For Wei Chuanqiu to say these words without Yu Qianqiu's permission, it was as if he was treating this place as his own home. Yun Peng, who had always been unperturbed, was also slowly walking on the spacious top floor, slowly feeling this world-shocking masterpiece. In the center of the flying beams and painted rafters, there was a dark purple smooth round table with several round stools of the same color. A cool breeze blew gently on top of the tall building. Yu Qianqiu sat there, his 5 fingers rhythmically tapping on the table as he quietly pondered. Perhaps many people felt that there was no need to build such a tall building and that it was unpractical to attract attention. However, for Yu Qianqiu it was very necessary. This was because the world commerce was not like other sections. The other sects only occupied a mountain in hallucinatory Immortal City as a branch business. Most of the people were still in the sect, so it was fine as long as there was enough space. However, what Yu Qianqiu was considering was to give a decent place for the hundreds of lords in the mortal world. Everyone was coming to the immortal world to follow him in conquering the world. He might not be able to satisfy their other requests, but at the very least he had to satisfy everyone with basic necessities. It would be even better if he could make everyone feel a sense of belonging to the world commerce. He had to accommodate a few hundred people and also had to leave some space for business. Not having enough space was not enough. Therefore Yu Qianqiu would rather spend a huge sum to solve all the problems at once. Otherwise, if everyone lived separately, they would definitely encounter unpredictable trouble or danger. If everyone gathered together, they would have something to rely on. After all, everyone's cultivation wasn't high in the immortal world, and the rules of hallucinatory Immortal City were enough to protect everyone. The registration of the world commerce, the territory, and a place to stay were all settled. The next step was the problem of manpower. Thinking of this, Yu Qianqiu slowly stood up and walked out of the flying beams and painted rafters with large strides. There was an uproar in the air. Everyone's gazes were on Yu Qianqiu. Words like he was Yu Qianqiu echoed in the air. Yu Qianqiu was already used to it. He walked to Wei Chuanqiu's side, looked into the distance and said faintly, "Help me send a message in hallucinatory Immortal City." Wei Chuanqiu was stunned. "Send what message?" "Say that world commerce will start recruiting people in 3 days. It doesn't matter if they're male or female, only ability. For now, we're only recruiting wandering cultivators at soul formation stage. We'll consider those with high cultivation later." Yu Qianqiu said faintly, "I want to recruit 300 to 400 people. We'll talk about the pay in person." Recruiting 300 to 400 wandering cultivators at soul formation stage, but he doesn't want those with high cultivation? Wei Chuanqiu looked at him like he was looking at a monster. Then a mocking smile appeared on his face. He guessed that Yu Qianqiu was afraid that his cultivation was too low and that it would be difficult to handle those with high cultivation. If that really happened, then it would be too embarrassing as the sect master of world commerce. Actually, it'll be more convenient to recruit people with high cultivation, Wei Chuanqiu kindly reminded. Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said unhappily, "If I get a bunch of people with higher cultivation than me, then what's the point of me being the sect master?" As soon as he said this, there was a burst of snickering in the air. Wei Chuanqiu said cheerfully, "All right, we'll do as you say. I'll go run the errands." Then he turned into a stream of light and flew towards the center of hallucinatory Immortal City. This conversation was naturally leaked and quickly spread to everyone in hallucinatory Immortal City. A soul formation sect master leading a group of soul formation stage cultivators. Anyone who heard this would think it was a joke. Everyone felt that such a weak world commerce would be eaten up by others sooner or later. 3 days later, in a hidden valley near hallucinatory Immortal City, more than 300 soul formation stage lords from the human world brazenly appeared. Nongzhu looked left and right and said, "This is the immortal realm?" The others also looked around, wanting to see the difference between the immortal realm and the human world. Yu Qianqiu powerlessly waved his hand at everyone and said, "Everyone, you're all people who have been overlords in the past after all. Can't all of you have some poise? Look at all of you. Don't look around like this after entering hallucinatory Immortal City. People can tell with a glance that all of you are foreigners who have just arrived. It's fine if it's 1 or 2 people, but it's hard not to be suspicious when hundreds of people like this appear." The group of people laughed embarrassedly. Yu Qianqiu looked around and said in a deep voice, "It's not suitable for me to stay here for long. Just do as I said earlier and there won't be any problems." After that, he quickly disappeared. The group of people waited for a while after he left, and then they split into groups of 2 or 3 or groups of more than 10 people. They didn't leave in a single direction, but scattered in all directions one after another. Once they flew out of the valley, they saw a boundless sea of clouds that covered the sky and immediately knew that it was hallucinatory Immortal City. Flowing lights of all colors flew in and out of the boundless sea of clouds at high speed. Everyone was excited to see this. These were the immortals that everyone had been looking forward to for a long time, and they all hurried forward. The sky directly opposite World Chamber of Commerce was already filled with people. They were all here to see the excitement of World Chamber of Commerce's recruitment. Wei Chuanqiu stood at the entrance with his hands behind his back like a door god, while Yun Peng stood quietly at the top of World Chamber of Commerce's building. Yu Qianqiu held a jade archive in his hand and wandered around the entrance. He realized that although there were many people watching, not a single one was willing to sign up. He guessed that everyone thought that World Chamber of Commerce's future was bleak, so no one was willing to join. However, Yu Qianqiu wasn't worried in the slightest, because the people he wanted to recruit had already been decided internally. There was no other way. The unspoken rules were in vogue now. Even if others were willing to join, he wouldn't accept them. After waiting for a while, an early-stage divine transformation cultivator finally braced himself and landed in front of the entrance under the watchful eyes of the crowd. He cupped his fists towards Yu Qianqiu and said, "I am willing to join World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." Yu Qianqiu stopped in his tracks and stood on the steps, smiling condescendingly as he said, "Welcome, welcome. However, there's something I need to tell you in advance. Our World Chamber of Commerce is currently in a tight financial situation, so we might only be able to give out our rewards once a year." "That's right. How much do you expect to receive every year?" "Once a year?" That person was stunned. He had come to this World Chamber of Commerce that not many people thought highly of because he was short on money. If he couldn't even get paid in time, then what would he use for a year? That person was stunned. He gritted his teeth and said, "May I know how much your esteemed World Chamber of Commerce can pay in a year?" "That's not necessarily true." Yu Qianqiu had a solemn expression as he said, "It mainly depends on the Chamber of Commerce's income. If we earn more money, we'll naturally give out more. If we don't earn any money, then we'll owe it for now and give it out when we have money." "You don't have to look at me like that. I'm a very trustworthy person, so I'm telling the truth and don't want to lie to you." There was a burst of snickering in the surroundings. If anyone was willing to join this kind of Chamber of Commerce, then that would really be strange. With his hands behind his back, Wei Chuanqiu turned his head to the side and rolled his eyes endlessly. It would be a wonder if they could recruit people like this. It's just that I, your grandfather, have such a hard life. Perhaps that person's brain couldn't wrap around it for a moment. After being stunned for a while, he awkwardly cupped his fists and said, "I'll think about it again." Without waiting for Yu Qianqiu to urge him to stay, he turned and ran, causing Yu Qianqiu to shake his head and sigh. The people hovering in the air roared with laughter. Those who were originally tempted to join the World Chamber of Commerce immediately gave up on the idea after hearing what Yu Qianqiu said. Many people also noticed that a group of soul formation cultivators were flying over from the middle of the mountain. The waterfall flew straight down. A group of soul formation cultivators from the human world couldn't help but hover in the air halfway up the mountain. They all stared unwaveringly at the four giant words, World Chamber of Commerce, that were surging out of the water. Chapter 865. The misty mist was dreamy and illusory, bringing with it a refreshing feeling. When the soul formation cultivators from the mortal world saw these four large words, they suddenly felt a shock that cleansed their hearts. Under the washing of the waves, the four large words emitted a hua-hua sound, as if it was a shocking four-word mantra. Although they already knew that Yu Qianqiu had established the World Commerce Association in the immortal world, they didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had actually created such a magnificent thing. In the immortal world, no one understood the meaning of these four words better than them. It was the #1 commerce association established by a peak expert in the mortal world. However, in order to resist the invasion of the outside world, that peak expert would rather die than submit, and had already died in battle. The World Commerce Association here was clearly a continuation of the mortal world. Its glory in the immortal world needed everyone to work together to write and carry forward. From the moment they saw these four words, everyone felt a heavy responsibility on their shoulders. This was especially so for Sikongju. When he saw these four huge words, his entire body trembled. Although he forcefully suppressed the excitement in his heart, his eyes could not help but turn red. His mind instantly recalled the black-robed figure under the pine tree. Looking at the surrounding verdant green mountains, only this mountain was completely bare rock. It was so barren, but it seemed incomparably unyielding, standing tall in the immortal world with an extraordinary aura. Stubborn. Tenacious. When everyone raised their heads, they could see the majestic building at the top of the mountain. Was this the World Commerce Association that Yu Qianqiu had single-handedly established in the immortal world? Everyone couldn't help but ask themselves. As soon as they entered illusory Illusion City, they were shocked by the numerous buildings that were connected by a myriad of mountains. All of them knew that every single mountain here represented a power in the immortal dimension. Every streak of light that brushed past them represented a realm that they couldn't surpass, a realm that they had been chasing after in their dreams. An enormous pressure filled their hearts, filling them with a sense of powerlessness. They couldn't help but ask themselves, can we really open up a world that belongs to us here? All of his hesitation disappeared when he saw the words, World Chamber of Commerce. His mind instantly became clear and his courage multiplied. They didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would be able to single-handedly establish a foundation in this unfamiliar place filled with tens of thousands of sections. The World Commerce Association already had a foothold in the immortal world. None of them were 3-year-olds. They knew that luck alone was not enough. The greater the achievement in front of them, the more effort they had put in behind it. Since the Punishment Master had single-handedly created a new starting point in this world, why should they be overcautious and worried? Everyone looked at each other with determined gazes, and then looked at the majestic skyscraper at the top of the mountain. I didn't expect this kid to be so capable. Old Bai's eyes are indeed extraordinary. Nongzhu glanced at the crowd in the air, and with a flash of her figure, she took the lead and swept up to the top of the mountain. A group of ambitious people followed one after another. Yu Qianqiu, who was strolling at the entrance with a jade archive in his hand, frowned slightly when he saw Nongzhu. He had instructed Nongzhu not to come, and to stay in the purple bamboo forest in the southern sea to take care of Farong and the others. At the same time that Nongzhu appeared, whispers broke out in the surroundings. A strange look flashed in the eyes of some of the women. They didn't expect that there would be such a handsome man among the demigod realm cultivators. Why didn't they notice it before? How could they know that this Sir Nongzhu was known as the most handsome man in the world? When Lu Yanqing, who had landed beside Wen Lanfeng, appeared, a trace of amazement flashed in the eyes of the group of men. They didn't expect that there would be such a beautiful and moving woman among the demigod realm women. Why didn't they notice it before? In everyone's eyes, with a group of people taking the lead, dozens of other groups immediately appeared. One by one, they landed on the top of the mountain and strode towards the entrance of the tall building. The crowd didn't know if they were imagining things, but each of these demigod realm cultivators had an extraordinary aura. Every single one of them had the aura of a superior being. Although their cultivations weren't much in the eyes of the crowd, when they gathered together, they suddenly gave off a feeling of awe. How could this be? The crowd floating in the air began to look at each other with puzzled expressions. Wei Chuanxiu, who was standing at the entrance of the tall building with his hands behind his back, narrowed his eyes as he looked at the group of demigod realm cultivators striding towards him. He actually felt a faint and threatening aura. How could this be? Nongzhu walked to the bottom of the stairs and put on an act as he cupped his hands towards Yu Qianqiu and said, Loose Cultivator Nongzhu is willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce. F***CK, didn't I tell you not to come? What about Farong and the others' safety? Don't worry, I've already convinced that old man Nanming to stay. Besides, if I don't come, others will inevitably have misgivings. The two of them communicated telepathically for a while. Yu Qianqiu squeezed out a smile and said, Welcome, welcome. However, there's something I need to tell you in advance. Our World Chamber of Commerce is currently in a tight financial situation, so we might only give out rewards once a year. Alright, how much do you expect to get every year? It was exactly the same as what he said to that demigod realm loose cultivator. Nongzhu's face revealed an elegant and faint smile, causing the hearts of the women in the air to ripple. He said calmly, I'm willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce not for the rewards, but because I like the potential of the World Chamber of Commerce. I hope to grow and develop together with the World Chamber of Commerce. Why did it feel like he heard this a lot in his previous life? The expression on Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. With an ugly smile, he turned sideways and made way for them. He waved his hand in invitation and said, The World Chamber of Commerce welcomes you to join us. Please come in. Nongzhu strode into the building with some curiosity. The jade archive in Yu Qianqiu's hand flashed with white light. Then Hu Changshou and Li Duxing bowed together and said, Hu Changshou and Li Duxing are willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you. Yu Qianqiu was about to reply with a smile, but Li Duxing blocked him with one arm and said coldly, Head you, if you want to talk about the rewards, then don't say it. I'm not here for the money. Like Mr. Nongzhu, I'm interested in the development potential of the World Chamber of Commerce. Me too. Hu Changshu said with a smile. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. Then he turned sideways to make way for them and said, "In that case, please come in." As soon as the two entered, a dozen people led by Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing stepped forward and bowed together, saying, "We're willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." As soon as they finished speaking, a large group of people rushed in from behind and shouted in a chaotic manner, "We're willing to join the World Chamber of Commerce and work for you." The group of people floating in the air was a little dumbfounded. They didn't know where these people came from. Under such harsh conditions, there were still people rushing to join. It was really strange. Yu Qianzhou's face turned slightly dark. What was wrong with these people? Weren't they afraid of being suspected by doing this together? So he waved his hand and shouted with a calm face, "Everyone think carefully. It's better not to join in the fun. Although the World Chamber of Commerce is a newly established chamber of commerce, it's not a place to idle around." Yunnan Tian, dressed in a white robe, squeezed out and cupped his hands, saying, "I don't know about others, but if I wanted to idle around, I wouldn't come here to be restricted. Head you, being able to establish a chamber of commerce with the cultivation of the spirit-severing stage is very admirable. It can be said that you've fought for the pride of us individual cultivators of the spirit-severing stage. Just based on this, I'm willing to serve the World Chamber of Commerce." Then he secretly transmitted his voice, "Torture Envoy, don't worry. Spirit-severing stage cultivators like us are nothing in the eyes of the immortal realm. So what if they suspect us? Could it be that there are people who can find out about our origins? As long as we don't say anything, no one will be able to find out. If someone wants to say anything, it'll be fake even if we pretend." Damn it. You guys really thought it through. Yu Qianzhou grinned speechlessly. Another person in the crowd raised his arm and shouted, "I'm also here for the World Chamber of Commerce. Other than the World Chamber of Commerce, I'm not going anywhere." With this shout, the crowd's emotions immediately surged. One by one, they raised their clenched fists and strongly requested to join the World Chamber of Commerce. It was as if they wouldn't join the World Chamber of Commerce. The atmosphere at the scene was a little chaotic, and the shouts were a mess. The people floating in the air to watch the show all revealed mocking smiles. Someone tilted his head and whispered to the people beside him, "This is very strange. Needless to say, it must be someone deliberately sent by some family to cause trouble." The people beside him giggled and replied, "Indeed. Although these people's cultivations aren't much, their auras are extraordinary. One look and you can tell that they aren't rogue cultivators. They're clearly here to cause trouble. They might even be sent by the heartless palace that he offended before. This time it'll be enough for Yu Qianzhou to suffer." He's asking for it. A mere soul formation cultivator actually dares to establish his own sect. It'd be strange if no one comes looking for trouble. On the top floor, Yun Peng had already landed on the jade railing at the edge. He lowered his head and stared down with a pair of sharp eyes suffused with killing intent. Below, Wei Chuanxiu's gaze swept across the crowd like cold lightning. He opened his mouth and shouted like a bolt from the blue, "Where did these little bastards come from? You know I'm here yet you still dare to cause trouble. Do you really think that I, Green Wing Bat King, is easy to bully?" Apart from Yu Qianzhou, who knew the truth, everyone else clearly thought that this group of people from the human world were here to cause trouble. "All of you shut up." Yu Qianzhou shouted from the doorway. He was indeed a little angry. These people were simply disorganized and undisciplined. The group of people also looked at him and no longer jeered. Yu Qianzhou tossed the jade archive in his hand to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Fill in your name and go in." Wen Lanfeng quickly wrote his name on the archive, then passed it to Lu Yanqing. Just like that, the jade archives were passed down one by one, and the crowd entered the building one by one. Wei Chuanxiu, who was standing guard at the side, was starting to panic. He teleported to Yu Qianzhou's side and warned, "These people are obviously here to cause trouble. Don't provoke them." Yu Qianzhou didn't know how to explain it to him. He stared at the back of the crowd and saw a few strangers sneaking into the crowd. Judging from their sneaky expressions, it was as if they were trying to fish in troubled waters. Yu Qianzhou narrowed his eyes and transmitted his voice to the people behind him, "Damn it! Do they really think this place is some kind of market where everyone wants to come in and take a look? Listen up, everyone. Don't be afraid of trouble. We have experts here to protect us. Slaughter those people who are trying to fish in troubled waters. Consider it a good start." Chapter 866. As soon as he said this, many people were delighted. Yu Qianqiu was Yu Qianqiu after all. Even after becoming the demonic ghost region's torturer, he was still the same. There was nothing he didn't dare to do, even in the immortal realm. However, since the torturer had spoken, then everyone had to do it. There was nothing much to say. Shu Xan tilted her head and glanced at the person who had just interrupted her. She turned around and glared at him angrily. That person was startled, but immediately nodded and smiled in a friendly manner. However, to his surprise, Shu Xan didn't say a word. Instead, she waved her hand and slapped him across the face. She shouted sternly, "How dare you touch this old lady's butt?" That person was about to lose his temper after being slapped, but when he heard this, he hurriedly waved his hand and said, "You've misunderstood. I didn't touch it." Someone next to him immediately sneered and said, "Damn it. If it wasn't you, then were we the ones who did it?" Then someone else said, "I'm ashamed to be associated with such scum. F***ck him." Before he could finish his sentence, a bunch of fists and kicks swarmed him. The wronged person was instantly buried by the crowd as he screamed in pain. This chaos immediately caused an even bigger commotion. Someone here shouted, "How dare you steal my stuff?" Someone there immediately shouted, "Why did you knock into me?" The scene of fighting and killing immediately became a mess, mixed with shrill cries of pain. A bloody person rushed up and immediately, a dozen or so flying swords flew out to kill him, creating a rain of blood. A few pieces of the fallen corpse were swatted away by someone's palm. The chaos of fighting and killing ended in a short while. A few mutilated corpses were kicked out of the crowd. The group of demonic transformation cultivators acted as if nothing had happened and slowly walked forward with the group. One by one they wrote their names on the Jade Archives, then entered the building. However, the bloody footprints that led straight to the World Commerce Guild's building were exceptionally glaring. There were also a few corpses that were so badly mutilated that they didn't even look human. The commotion below caused the group of onlookers to be dumbstruck. This recruitment scene was truly lively. This group of Soul Formation Stage fellows were truly bold. They actually dared to make a move in the illusory immortal city. Some of the people in the sky had gloomy expressions. They had personally witnessed their own disciples being beaten to death, so it would be strange if they were in a good mood. These disciples who were killed were spies that some sects wanted to plant in the World Commerce Chamber of Commerce. Who knew that they would be eliminated before they could even begin. What depressed some people the most was that they could only watch as their disciples were beaten to death, but they couldn't do anything to stop it. Otherwise, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to tell that it was someone sent by their sect. He had never seen such a group of people who didn't follow the rules. They didn't have any scruples at all and just made a move. Just like that, several hundred people entered the World Commerce Chamber's building. Wei Chuanxiu watched everything that had just happened, dumbstruck. From time to time he would turn his head to look at the people walking around laughing and joking in the lobby. This group of Soul Formation Stage wandering cultivators really had guts. When did Soul Formation Stage cultivators have more guts than me? He swallowed his saliva and asked Yu Qianqiu with difficulty, "Yu Qianqiu, are you sure you want to recruit this group of people?" Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu looked at him with a gloomy expression and said in a low voice, "Bat King Wei, please make a trip to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to make a report. Just say that some sects are suspected of deliberately sending people to cause trouble during our World Commerce Chamber's recruitment. A few people have been killed here. You must ask the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to investigate the mastermind behind the scenes and give justice to our World Commerce Chamber." Make a report? Wei Chuanxiu was startled. He felt that the words "make a report" sounded familiar. After hesitating for a while, he saw Yu Qianqiu's face surge with anger. "If you're not going, then I'll go." "Alright, I'll go. Wei Chuanxiu's body turned into a stream of light and flew away. Who asked him to invest so much money into the World Commerce Chamber? He was still waiting for this sect Master Yu to give him more money. The group of onlookers in the air nodded thoughtfully when they heard this. Indeed, Yu Qianqiu thought the same as them. They also suspected that someone had deliberately come to cause trouble. However, they were more suspicious of those people who had entered the World Commerce Chamber's building. Those people were more likely to be here to cause trouble. Many people even thought that perhaps Yu Qianqiu wanted to deliberately calm the people inside and then invite the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to wipe them out. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu also cupped his hands towards the group of people in the air and said in a clear voice, "I'm really sorry to have let everyone see this joke. It was not my wish for this to happen. From now on, The World Commerce Chamber will temporarily stop recruitment until the Chamber of Commerce Alliance has investigated this matter. Not long after, Wei Chuanxiu brought 2 golden-robed men. As soon as the 2 men arrived, some people in the crowd began to quietly leave. With someone taking the lead, the others thought about it and did not want to cause trouble, so they also silently dispersed in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the crowd of onlookers was completely gone. The 2 golden-robed men turned the corpses over and examined them several times. They found that the corpses were already badly mutilated and their original faces could not be seen clearly. The strangest thing was that they could not even find a storage bracelet or storage bag on their bodies. If there were, perhaps they could find some clues from inside. Yu Qianqiu, who accompanied the examination, also felt that it was a little strange at this moment. Even if they were itinerant cultivators, they should not be unable to even hang a storage bag, right? He then looked back at the people wandering in the building with some doubts. In fact, his suspicions were not wrong. The things on the bodies of these dead people had been taken advantage of by some people inside. They had gotten a taste of robbing things in the divine ruin realm and could not help but steal it. After the 2 golden-robed men finished their examination, they looked at each other and shook their heads slightly. Clearly they did not find anything. One of them turned around and asked, "Sect Master Yu, what evidence do you have to prove that these people were deliberately sent by some sect to cause trouble?" "It's very simple. I don't have any enemies in the immortal world. And look at them." Yu Qianqiu pointed to the corpses and said, "They don't even have a storage bag on them. It's fine if it's just one, but all of them are like this. It's clearly a premeditated move. This is the best evidence." Wei Chuanxiu, who was at the side, rubbed his chin in doubt. He seemed to have seen these people mix into the crowd with storage bags on their bodies. Why were they gone? The golden-robed man sneered in his heart. The matter of you killing the disciples of Heartless Palace in the Divine Ruin Realm is already known to the world, and you still say you don't have any enemies? He then frowned and said, "Then who killed them?" "They killed each other. Many people can prove it." Yu Qianqiu looked around and saw that there was no one around. He said in a daze, "The onlookers just now all saw it with their own eyes." The golden-robed man's gaze followed the bloody footprints and extended to the crowd in the building. He snorted coldly and said, "What a coincidence. All of them killed each other. Sect leader Yu, you've seen what happened. We also believe that these people were sent by some sects to cause trouble, but we can't find any evidence at all. We can't just point fingers at any sect. I reckon that we won't be able to find anything even if we work ourselves to death. I think we should just let this matter go. It's not a big deal anyway. Sect Master Yu, what do you think?" The meaning in his words was very clear. They did not want to make a big fuss over a few insignificant people. They asked Yu Qianqiu to stop here. The reason why Yu Qianqiu complained first was because he wanted to avoid trouble first. He did not want his World Commerce Chamber to cause trouble. It did not matter to him whether they pursued the matter or not. However, he still took out 2 storage bracelets and stuffed them into the golden-robed man's hands. He said with a serious face, "I believe the Commerce Chamber Alliance's decision is the most fair." The golden-robed man checked the items in the storage bracelets. He found that there were 10,000 divine-grade spirit stones in each bracelet. There was nothing else. He was stunned for a moment before he realized that it was a reward from the golden-robed man. He nodded and said, "It's good that Sect Master Yu knows this. We will take these 2 pieces of evidence back and check them carefully. I'll have to trouble Sect Master Yu to deal with these corpses yourself. My name is Kong Hua and he is Chao Xingyang. If you have any problems in the future, feel free to look for us." Okay. Take care." Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and sent them off. The 2 golden-robed men cupped their fists politely and turned into 2 streaks of light as they flew away. After watching the 2 leave, Wei Chuanqiu came over and asked suspiciously, "What kind of evidence is inside those 2 storage bracelets?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes as if saying, "You don't even know this?" He casually flicked a few sparks, burning the corpses into ashes. The 2 of them then walked into the main hall, looking at the several hundred people gathered in the hall. These several hundred people were also looking at Yu Qianqiu with passion. If they weren't worried about whether Wei Chuanqiu was a friend or a foe, they would have come over to express their excitement. Wei Chuanqiu frowned as she looked at this group of people. Wei Chuanqiu, on the other hand, frowned as he looked at this group of people. In his heart, he still felt a little unhappy that Yu Qianqiu had rashly accepted this group of people. However, he had promised Yu Qianqiu that he would not interfere in any matters of the world commerce. "Everyone, since you have joined my World Commerce Chamber, we are one family from now on. I don't ask much of everyone, I only hope that everyone can work together to run the World Commerce Chamber well. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Wei Chuanqiu and said, "Let me introduce to everyone, this is an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert, Green Wing Bat King Wei Chuanqiu. He is one of the members of our World Commerce Chamber. There is also a white-robed guest upstairs, also an early-stage Immortal Emperor expert. He is White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng, who is equally famous as Bat King Wei. Early-stage Immortal Emperor expert." Everyone was shocked, but they were all smart people. Hearing Yu Qianqiu's polite introduction, they immediately understood that they had to have a reserved attitude towards Bat King Wei. There were some secrets that couldn't be revealed. They immediately bowed and said, "Greetings, Bat King Wei." Wei Chuanqiu waved her hand indifferently and didn't say anything. Clearly, she wasn't very interested in everyone. Yu Qianqiu smiled and pointed upstairs. "The first to fifth floors of this building are for business. The sixth floor is all guest rooms used to receive guests. Starting from the sixth floor, each floor has 25 sets of single rooms. There are 307 people here. From the 7th floor to the 20th floor, there are a total of 14 floors. There are a total of 350 single rooms, enough for everyone to live in." Chapter 867. Nongzhu asked curiously, "I did some calculations. The entire building seems to have 23 floors. What are the remaining 3 floors for?" Wei Chuanqiu frowned when he heard this and stared coldly at Nongzhu. "Don't ask what you shouldn't ask. Sect leader naturally knows what arrangements to make." The group of people exchanged glances with complicated expressions. They suddenly felt pity for this Bat King Wei. "It's fine." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said with a faint smile, "The 21st floor is reserved for us to discuss matters. The 22nd floor is for this sect leader alone. As for the 23rd floor, it's a platform. Everyone can go up and enjoy the scenery if you have nothing to do. However, it's best if everyone doesn't go to the platform right now to avoid disturbing White Cloud Mountain Lord's peace." Yunnan Tian, who was dressed in a white fur coat, cupped his hands and interrupted, "Sect leader you mean that we can choose any of the 350 rooms from the 7th to the 20th floor?" "Yes. We can choose any room we want. However, there's nothing much to choose. The size and layout of the rooms are all the same. The only difference is the floor. However, I have to say something up front." Yu Qianqiu swept his sharp gaze across the crowd and said, "Everyone is an independent cultivator. Normally no one will restrict you. I won't restrict you so strictly either. However, everyone must be self-aware. Otherwise don't blame me for being impolite. Perhaps everyone has different preferences for the location and direction of the rooms. However, it's best that everyone discuss among themselves and don't cause any trouble within the World Commerce Association. Remember, everyone must unite for the interests of the World Commerce Association. If anyone causes any internal trouble, this is absolutely not allowed. I will kill everyone I see without mercy." When he said the word, independent cultivator, his tone was especially serious. It was obvious that he was referring to everyone's original identity. He wanted everyone to restrain their overlord tempers. When he finished speaking, his eyes were already faintly hiding a killing intent. Everyone instantly shivered. No one doubted the credibility of Yu Qianqiu's words. This punishment envoy would indeed not be lenient. Everyone had seen it when they were in the human world. Wei Chuanqiu also looked at Yu Qianqiu with some surprise. He thought that Yu Qianqiu would lay down a bunch of punishment for violating the rules. Who would have thought that the word kill would be a little too harsh? However, Wei Chuanqiu's brows finally relaxed a little. He didn't like this group of people in the first place, so it would be more in line with his wishes if they could be a little stricter. After everyone looked at each other, they bowed in unison and said, "Yes, sect leader." Yu Qianqiu nodded, a smile returning to his face as he said, "Everyone can choose any room from the 7th to the 20th floor. However, there is one thing to remember. Once a room is chosen, you are not allowed to change it. Whoever lived in the room should put their name on the edge of the door so that it would be convenient to find each other if something happened. The sign should be the same. In addition, each level has to recommend 2 directors and 2 deputy directors. As for how you recommend them, that's your own business. I won't interfere. I believe that the people you recommend are the people you trust the most. However, once the recommendation is made, the others will have to obey the management. Otherwise, they will have to bear the consequences." Director and deputy director? Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. They didn't know what the director and deputy director were in charge of. Nongzhu asked doubtfully, What are the directors and deputy directors of this floor in charge of? Yu Qianqiu waved his arm in a circle and pointed at the entire building. This building is our foothold in the immortal world. From today onwards, it will also be the core of our world commerce. As the saying goes, nothing can be accomplished without rules. If we can't even maintain our own core, we can't talk about developing the world commerce. What are the so-called directors and deputy directors in charge of? It's very simple, they are mainly in charge of hygiene. Don't King litter the corridors. I hate this the most. If I find anyone littering and want to turn this building I've worked so hard to build into a garbage dump, I won't allow it. When the time comes I will ask King Wei to enforce the law. King Wei. When he heard that he was in charge of this group of people, King Wei immediately became spirited. He righteously cupped his fists and said, "Here." In fact, it would be more appropriate to describe it as murderous. It made the group of people shudder with fear. Oh my. He actually asked an early-stage immortal emperor expert to enforce the law. How could he let people live? Yu Qianqiu coldly swept his gaze over everyone and said, "Remember, in this building as long as anyone dares to litter, or spit out of their mouths, you will break their teeth. I want you to break the hand of the one who threw it. I want you to break the leg of the one who kicked out. No matter who it is, don't give me face. King Wei, can you do it?" "Don't worry. Leave this to me." Wei Chuanqiu patted his chest loudly. He had a sinister smile on his face. His small eyes flickered as if he had already entered the state of enforcing the law. "Let me add one more point." Yu Qianqiu said indifferently, "This building is the public property of the world commerce. No one is allowed to destroy anything in this building. Everyone has the responsibility to maintain it. King Wei enforced the law as per above." Wei Chuanqiu nodded heavily and stared at the crowd with a fiendish gaze. The group of people instantly felt their hands and feet turn cold. If they weren't careful one day they might get their hands and feet broken by this guy. Of course, I don't care how you break your own things. I don't care how dirty or messy your rooms are. That's your lifestyle. But once you leave your rooms, you have to pay attention to the image of the world commerce. I'll take care of whoever dares to mess around." Yu Qianqiu roared. "Do you all hear me clearly?" "Yes, sect leader." The group of people bowed submissively. Seeing everyone's expressions, Wei Chuanqiu clicked his tongue in wonder. He didn't know what was going on, but this group of people seemed to be quite afraid of Yu Qianqiu. It didn't seem like they were pretending, but they were really afraid. This is the reason why I asked you to recommend a supervisor and deputy supervisor. The supervisor and deputy supervisor must perform their duty of supervising the cleanliness of this floor. It's best to arrange for people to clean the floor regularly. If anyone doesn't listen to supervision, the supervisor and deputy supervisor can report to King Wei. King Wei will deal with the troublemakers. If King Wei discovers that the cleanliness is messy, and the supervisor and deputy supervisor didn't deal with it or report it in time, then King Wei will settle accounts with the supervisor and deputy supervisor of the floor in question, Yu Qian said to the crowd. The group of people was instantly speechless. They didn't expect that after all this fuss, the torture commissioner's priority was still hygiene. He didn't mention the plan to develop the World Commerce Association at all, and he even found a scary guy to manage them. But when they thought about it, it made sense. Yu Qianqiu's intentions were very clear. In the short term, the World Commerce Association probably wouldn't recruit outsiders. With no one to clean the floor, they naturally had to rely on themselves. They were all used to being bosses, so without a strong constraint, the floor might really become a mess. Then again, they finally understood. What bullshit supervisor and deputy supervisor? It turned out they were doing a thankless job, only ghosts would be willing to do it. At this time, Yu Qianqiu took out a storage bracelet and threw it to Hu Changshu, saying, "There are 10 million divine-grade spirit stones inside, take it and split it among everyone. Go buy some things for your rooms, I believe they can be found in the hallucinatory immortal city. I'll give you half a day to choose your rooms, buy things and tidy up your rooms." Half a day later, all of you gather on the 21st floor for a meeting. At that time, the supervisor and deputy supervisor of each floor will record down everyone's room's location and hand it to me, so that I won't cause trouble in the future. Time is limited, disperse and go about your own business. The group of people dispersed in an uproar, dashing toward the stairs on both sides of the lobby. Almost no one walked, all of them flew up, anxious to find a good room on a good floor. In the blink of an eye, the lobby became empty again. Wei Chuanqiu frowned. "Don't tell me you established the World Commerce Association just to clean the floor? Don't you have any other rules?" Rice needs to be eaten one bite at a time, things need to be arranged one by one. If I talk too much nonsense not to mention them even I won't be able to remember. We'll talk about it later. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand disapprovingly, leisurely walking toward the stairs on the side saying, "Come, let's go patrol, don't let these fellows cause any trouble." The group of feudal lords who were rushing up seemed to like high floors, mainly because high floors had a lot of convenience for them. For example, the problem of climbing up and down too high was not a problem for them at all. Almost all of them reached the 20th floor at the same time. Noticing that there were too many competitors, they couldn't be bothered to choose their rooms. First come, first served was needless to say, they couldn't possibly fight over the rooms, right? If that happened, wouldn't Yu Qianqiu skin them alive? Hence, the group of people rushed to the door as soon as they saw one. The first person to grab a room immediately stood in the doorway, shouting at the fleeing crowd, "This room is already taken." The 20th floor was quickly filled, and the group went to the 19th floor to snatch a room. Some people had foresight and knew that they couldn't win against those with slightly higher cultivation in terms of speed. Hence, they didn't go to the 20th floor to snatch a room, and directly went to the 19th floor to occupy a room. Those who came down from the 20th floor immediately cursed, and had no choice but to go to the 18th floor to snatch a room. In the end, they discovered that every room was also filled with people, watching them make a fool of themselves. Curses immediately resounded throughout the entire building. However, they only dared to curse a little. If they wanted to make a move, they had to ask if the Devil Regent's torture envoy agreed. When they reached the 10th floor and below, no one was willing to fight anymore. To them, there was no difference between the 10th floor and the 7th floor. In the end, regardless of whether everyone was satisfied with the floor or not, they all chose their own rooms. However, when everyone entered their own rooms, their eyes lit up. They discovered that the inside was rather spacious and bright. The area wasn't as small as they had imagined, and there was enough space for them to move around. The polished jade floor was so smooth that it could reflect one's reflection. The detailed structure inside was definitely the work of skilled craftsmen, and there was a low-key luxury in its simplicity. There was a living room that was dozens of square meters, a study that was dozens of square meters, a bedroom that was dozens of square meters, and a small bathroom that was more than 10 square meters. This could be seen from the sewer pipes that were arranged inside, as well as the waterproof jade walls that were embedded in the surrounding walls. Chapter 868. Apart from the washroom, the other 3 large rooms were well lit, and they all had windows that could be opened to receive light. Someone opened the window to look outside, and suddenly found that the window next door was also open. Both parties looked at each other and laughed. When everyone heard that so many people would be confined to this building, they were somewhat unhappy and felt like they were going to be imprisoned. However, looking at the structure of the building now, Yu Qianqiu had put a lot of effort into it. From the delightful details, it could be seen that it was really a place for everyone to live, and there was no intention of confining them. What they didn't know was that Yu Qianqiu had originally planned to build a kitchen and a bathroom in every room according to what he knew in his previous life. However, after thinking about it, with everyone's cultivation, it was completely unnecessary. This was because regardless of whether everyone knew how to cook in their rooms, there was no such thing as gas in this era. If they really moved firewood into their rooms, it would be very funny. In fact, he didn't even plan to build the washroom at the start. However, thinking that humans were already used to dealing with water, it was inevitable that there would be a place to dispose of sewage, so he kept it. If they really wanted to take a bath, there was already an underground space at the bottom of the floor for everyone to bathe in. It was all pure natural mountain spring water. In order to let everyone live comfortably, it could be said that Yu Qianqiu had put in a lot of effort to consider every detail, wanting to do his best to satisfy everyone with the current conditions. Due to the limited time after everyone booked their rooms, they threw themselves into the matter of recommending the manager and deputy managers of the floor. Absolutely no one was willing to take on such a taxing and unrewarding position. However, there was no helping it, someone had to do it. After pushing the responsibility around, everyone agreed that only people of virtue and prestige had the qualifications to manage everyone. As a result, those who had relatively higher cultivation and were more famous were unlucky. Under the expectations of the public, they were forcibly given the title of deputy supervisor. Originally, there were also some people living on the 7th floor, but everyone realized that with a lack of people, cleaning was definitely a very unlucky thing. Taking advantage of the fact that before everything was confirmed, they quickly occupied the empty rooms on the 8th floor. Thus, the entire 7th floor was empty. At this point, the lords of the various countries had actually occupied the 13th floor. Not long after, everyone took out a jade archive of the same size and engraved their names on it. Then they stuck it on the horizontal bar by the door. Although the structure of the room was to everyone's liking, it was a pity that there wasn't a single piece of essential furniture. It seemed a little empty. However, Yu Qianshou had already thought of this point. Due to the differences in personal preferences, he was unable to help them with these things. Hence, he directly threw out 10 million divine grade spirit stones, letting everyone decide for themselves. Seizing the opportunity that they still had, the group of people flew out from their respective windows and headed straight for the central square of Illusory City, and they naturally intended to purchase without restraint. After he returned, he busied himself in his room and began to arrange the layout that he liked. Half a day later, hundreds of people sat cross-legged in the central conference room on the 21st floor. There were no chairs in this large conference room, but there were a few small conference rooms outside that had those things. 13 floor supervisors who were recommended by the crowd took out a jade archive and handed it over with a bitter expression on their faces. Inside the jade archive was a list of names of the people on each floor and their room locations. Yu Qianshou looked at these 13 floor supervisors who were recommended by the crowd, and his stomach was filled with joy. As expected, these 13 floor supervisors were people who ranked highly in the cultivation world. Nongzhu, who had come to join in the fun, was one of them. She threw the jade archive at Yu Qianshou with a displeased expression, which provoked Wei Chuanxiu, who was sitting beside Yu Qianshou. Wei Chuanxiu stood up and was about to hit Nongzhu, scaring her out of her wits. "It's just a small matter, hee. Don't worry. Bat King Wei, don't be angry." Yu Qianshou quickly stopped Wei Chuanxiu. Wei Chuanxiu glared at Nongzhu and snorted, "If there's a next time, I'll cut your head off." Nongzhu nodded with a gloomy expression, and followed the floor supervisors back to their seats. Yu Qianshou swept his gaze across the crowd and said, "I'll cut to the chase. I've gathered everyone here today to inform everyone that the World Chamber of Commerce will officially open for business in half a month's time. During this time, we need everyone to make preparations." Sikongju. Present. Sikongju, who was sitting cross-legged in the crowd below, stood up. Yu Qianshou chuckled and said, "I heard that you're quite knowledgeable about doing business. Come find me later and we'll discuss the preparations." He then waved his hand indicating for Sikongju to sit down and called out, "Mr. Nongzhu." Present. Nongzhu stood up helplessly, regretting coming here. She had to listen to this brat's orders, but she had no choice but to listen. There was still Bat King Wei eyeing her like a tiger watching its prey, and she had no friendship with him at all. If he made a move, he wouldn't show any mercy. Yu Qianshou smiled and instructed, "During this time, we need to build momentum for the World Chamber of Commerce's opening. From tomorrow onwards, pick 10 people to distribute flyers at the Central Plaza every day for 10 days. Come find me later with Sikongju and we'll discuss it properly." "Yes." Nongzhu sat down with a head full of fog. She kept muttering in her stomach. What did he mean by distributing flyers? Not only her but everyone else was also confused. Yu Qianshou called out again, "Hu Changshou." Present. Hu Changshou quickly stood up to receive the order. The smile on Yu Qianshou's face disappeared and he said solemnly, "From today onwards, you'll be in charge of the entire World Chamber of Commerce's defense. Every day, assign a certain number of people to be on duty at various key locations to guard the entire building and prevent thieves from sneaking in and causing damage. When you discover any abnormalities, the first thing you need to do is to send out an alarm signal. I've already discussed it with Bat King Wei. Once he receives the alarm signal, Bat King Wei will come out to deal with it. After the meeting, come and find me. We'll discuss and make arrangements for this matter." He stood up again as he spoke and swept his cold gaze over everyone. Everyone must listen to Hu Changshou's defense arrangements. You're not allowed to defy him. If you're discovered, you'll have to bear the consequences. Hearing this, everyone was a little surprised. Everyone knew that Hu Changshou had a grudge with Yu Qianshou. They didn't expect that Yu Qianshou would actually hand over such an important responsibility to Hu Changshou. This was truly beyond everyone's expectations. Hu Changshou himself was also greatly surprised. He cupped his fists and said somewhat excitedly, "Yes, sir." He had commanded many people, but this was the first time he had commanded so many soul formation experts. In fact, appointing Hu Changshou wasn't a means for Yu Qianshou to win people's hearts, but Hu Changshou was indeed suitable. Back then, among the top 10 experts in the cultivation world, among those who could band together and contend against each other, Hu Changsho was the only one who was still alive. He was definitely a guy who had experienced all kinds of trials, and his ability to deal with all kinds of emergencies was unquestionable. Although when Lan Feng, Li Duxing, and Nongzhu were all at the late soul formation stage, they were absolutely no match for Hu Changsho in terms of troop deployment experience. This was the reason why Yu Qianqiu put Hu Changsho in such an important position. This meeting didn't last long. Yu Qianqiu mainly wanted everyone to get used to this mode, and secondly he wanted everyone to be prepared to accept all kinds of deployments. After the meeting, Xikongju, Nongzhu, and Hu Changsho all left with Yu Qianqiu. They sat in the small conference room again and discussed the specific matters in detail. After they finished their secret discussion, Hu Changsho immediately began to arrange people to guard the entire mountaintop. Nongzhu's handsome face wrinkled like a bitter gourd. Handing out leaflets. That night, on the roof of the World Chamber of Commerce, Yu Qianqiu held a grand welcome banquet to welcome everyone to join the World Chamber of Commerce. No one knew where he got a lot of barbecue racks, but they were distributed on the roof of the high-rise building, and there was also a unique mellow wine. After a burst of gorgeous fireworks went off with a deafening bang, the tempting aroma of barbecue and mellow wine wafted on the roof under the endless starry sky. Wan Gutong's elder Wan Gi, Mythical Fire Palace's elder Hua Feng, Spiritual Cultivation Sect's elder Du Nanshan, and Skyward Palace's elder Ye Donglu. The four elders of the four sects gladly accepted the invitation and joined Yu Qianqiu, laughing and drinking to their heart's content. Actually, Yu Qianqiu had also invited Kong Hua and Chao Xinjiang from the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. However, due to their identities, it wasn't convenient for them to mingle with the other sects, so they tactfully declined. The entire roof was filled with the fragrance of wine and meat and laughter. In addition to the fireworks that were set off earlier, it really attracted many people to float in the night sky to watch. Later on, Yu Qianqiu personally displayed his barbecue skills to serve the elders of the four sections. It could be said that he gave the four elders enough face. Sect Master Yu, why don't you invite Bat King Wei and White Cloud Mountain Chieftain over to join in the fun? Du Nanshan tilted his head to look at Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng, who were standing side by the railing. The other elders also nodded in agreement. In fact, in terms of cultivation, the four of them were only at the late Great Immortal stage, far inferior to Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng. However, because of their background, they were qualified to share a table with the two of them. Yu Qianqiu placed a skewer of barbecued food in front of them, shook his head and smiled bitterly. You all should know that White Cloud Mountain Chieftain doesn't like crowds. Let Bat King Wei accompany him. There's no need to force it, it won't work anyway. Hearing this, the others nodded and no longer talked about Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng. The lords kept glancing at them. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to establish a good relationship with the big sects of the immortal world in such a short period of time. They couldn't help but have a little more confidence in their own future. Yu Qianqiu harvested a pile of barbecued food from the barbecue rack and placed it on the table where the elders were seated. He also sat down and smiled to them. There's a piece of news that was originally going to be announced tomorrow. Since the elders have honored me with your presence, I'll disclose it in advance. My World Commerce Alliance is preparing to officially open in half a month. I wonder if the elders have any suggestions or reminders. Chapter 869. The few of them were startled. After looking at each other, they cupped their hands together and said some words of congratulations or auspicious opening. After the pleasantries, Wang Yi asked tentatively, "May I know what kind of business the world commerce will be relying on the opening day?" The other three also looked like they were all ears. Yu Qianqiu knew about this old tradition of the world commerce. Normally, on the opening day of a world commerce, they would bring out a business that could stabilize the scene as their main focus. They would also trade at a price slightly lower than the market price, in order to make business flourish and people flourish. For example, if Skyward Palace opened, it would definitely use immortal pills as its main focus, while Mythical Fire Palace would use refined immortal weapons as its main focus. In short, they had to come up with a business that could withstand the test and not cause panic buying due to the low price, causing them to run out of stock on the opening day. In the immortal realm, this was a very important matter for a world commerce that did business. It had almost become an old rule. If they could withstand the test, it meant that the world commerce's strength and confidence were extraordinary. If they couldn't withstand the test, they would become a joke. Being forced to close on the opening day, if that wasn't a joke, then what was? This kind of thing often happened when some newly established world commerce opened. Because all kinds of businesses in the immortal realm had already been opened, the latecomers would be suspected of stealing business. Often, the large sects that did business with them would deliberately embarrass the small world commerce on the opening day and make a large purchase, forcing them to close on the opening day. Yu Qianqiu calmly opened his mouth and bit off a mouthful of meat from the iron skewer. He drank a mouthful of wine and swallowed it, then smiled faintly and said, "Elders, what do you think of my world commerce using immortal herbs as the main focus?" Immortal herbs? The few of them were all stunned. In the immortal realm, there were no world commerce or sects that specialized in immortal herbs. These things could only be sold if they were picked. In addition, there was a limit to their growth cycle. Other than a few sects that were proficient in alchemy for generations, they would spend a lot of time growing them. Generally, other than the period after the Divine Ruin realm closed, there were very few situations where they were sold on a large scale. Huafeng laughed heartily and said, "Sect Master you really knows how to pick a time." He actually chose to open the shop with immortal herbs right after the Divine Ruin realm closes. This is indeed a good idea. It can greatly reduce the risk of panic buying. You can't say that. Yadonglu shook his head slowly. Although the immortal world doesn't have any merchant associations or sects that only deal in immortal herbs, and it's unlikely that a sect will try to take you down a notch on that day, Sect Master you, I'm afraid you still have to stock up a little more. It's better to be safe than sorry. What if someone deliberately comes to cause trouble? Huafeng looked at Yadonglu and chuckled. Opening with an immortal herb as the main item, if someone wants to buy it wantonly, I think it's most likely your Skyward Palace. Think about it, what your Skyward Palace needs the most are immortal herbs. In addition, on the opening day of the World Chamber of Commerce, they will sell them cheaply. If you don't buy them in bulk now, when will you? The other two also laughed and Yadonglu said with a bitter smile, I really can't guarantee this because it's quite possible. If the sect really wants to order a large purchase, I can't stop it. I'm just afraid that I'll feel embarrassed when I meet Sect Master Yu in the future. Elder Yu worries too much. Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. The reason why we dare to open the World Chamber of Commerce this time is because we have the strong support of Wei Fu Wang and Baiyin Mountain Lord. We can't guarantee that the main items we prepare will be able to deal with the impact on the opening day, but it's barely enough. As for the rest, we'll leave it to fate. What does it matter if we close the door on that day? I don't care. The reason why he invited these people was to deliberately leak the news first. He wanted everyone to know that the immortal herbs in his hands mainly came from Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu, so that there wouldn't be too many people thinking about him. Everyone laughed it off and consciously stopped dwelling on this topic. In fact, everyone knew that the opening of the World Chamber of Commerce this time wouldn't be so smooth. Even if Skyward Palace didn't make a move, Heartless Palace wouldn't let it go. During this time, Heartless Palace hadn't been doing well. Not only had they lost a lot of face in the Divine Ruin realm, even the grandson of the High Priest had been killed, and even his corpse hadn't been found. And everyone in the immortal world knew that Yu Qianqiu and Heartless Palace had formed a grudge. Coincidentally, the World Chamber of Commerce was opening at this time. Based on Heartless Palace's style of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance, it would definitely be difficult to be kind. If it wasn't for Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu holding down the fort in the World Chamber of Commerce, not to mention openly, they would also secretly attack Yu Qianqiu. Fortunately, there were these two experts holding down the fort, but it was estimated that it would be difficult to avoid embarrassment this time, and the twists and turns in the future would definitely be endless. Late at night, the mood was over and the wine was drunk. The flickering charcoal fire slowly extinguished, and the people gathered on the roof also dispersed. When Lan Feng slowly walked away from the white jade railing, leaving behind a lonely and graceful figure. Facing the night wind, Lu Yanqing casually pulled out the hairpin that tied her beautiful hair, and her fine black hair fluttered in the night wind. The beautiful hair that had been destroyed had once again grown back to its original state, but it was unknown whether that heart was the same as before. Leaning against the white jade railing, Lu Yanqing slowly turned her head. From her fluttering beautiful hair, she could see that Yu Qianqiu was sitting alone under the night sky, supporting his head with one hand and frowning in thought. She really wanted to go over and ask him. With his current cultivation, staying in the human world was enough for him to be free and unfettered. Was this not good? Why did he have to be so busy and never stop? Just as she was hesitating, Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng walked over together and sat opposite to Yu Qianqiu. The two of them glanced at Lu Yanqing, and the expressions of the three of them changed. It was obvious that they were talking about something through voice transmission. As Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a faint smile, the three of them ended their conversation. Yu Qianqiu, who was about to get up and leave, saw Lu Yanqing alone and was slightly startled. Then he nodded and smiled calmly and quickly left. Wei Chuanqiu also followed and left. Lu Yanqing gently bit her lips and inadvertently met Yun Peng's gaze. Yun Peng's eyes flashed with a hint of amazement, and the two of them nodded their heads slightly. Then they turned back to look at the confused night sky. A woman in green was on one side and a man in white was on the other. From that night onwards, the two figures on the rooftop were no longer alone. However, one of them was always on this side while the other was on the other side. Every time they met, they would only nod and greet each other. Neither of them spoke a single word. The next day, the elegant Nongzhu brought 10 people with her. Each of them carried a large pile of printed leaflets to the central square of the fantasy immortal city to distribute. Nongzhu really couldn't figure out what Yu Qianqiu's brain was made of. Why did he always do such strange things? In the end, after a day, not only did they have enough of being rolled their eyes, they also had to squeeze out a smile to receive the rolling eyes and mocking remarks. The muscles on their faces almost stiffened from smiling. When they thought that they would have to live like this for 10 days, these people almost broke down. If it weren't for Yu Qianqiu, the torture envoy holding the fort, everyone would have quit long ago. However, the effect of such an alternative publicity was huge. It more or less caused a sensation in the fantasy immortal city. The news of the World Commerce Company's opening in half a month quickly spread throughout the entire immortal realm. If this happened in the past, everyone would definitely be dismissive. Who would know who the World Commerce Company was? However, Yu Qianqiu's own little reputation, coupled with the sensation caused by the waterfall carvings and the tall building, brought an unimaginable effect to this publicity. The commotion made it seem like it was really going to happen. Bang! A table was smashed into smithereens. In the illusionary immortal city's Heartless Palace's branch, Heartless Palace's elder Feng Jiaoru sneered repeatedly, "This Yu Qianqiu really knows how to cause trouble. One thing after another, there's no end to it. Looks like he'll be a scourge sooner or later." Her disciple Sun Luan, who was also the branch leader here, looked at the smashed table and cupped his hands. "Master, please calm down. It's just a mere Yu Qianqiu. There's no need to get angry over him. If you want to take care of him, you can do it anytime." Feng Jiru glanced over coldly. "Anytime? Then why can't you even put a few spies in the World Commerce Company? The moment you show your face you get wiped out. Do you think he's easy to take care of? Just because he has Yun Peng and Wei Chuanqiu by his side. If the sect's consecrators don't show up, even I can't do anything to him. Are you stronger than me?" Sun Luan was speechless. He thought about how useless his position as a branch leader was. Because of the importance of this location, the sect had sent an additional elder to oversee it. Furthermore, this elder just had to be his master. His days were completely different from the other branch leaders who lived comfortable lives in charge of an area. Sun Luan paused and squeezed out a smile. "Master, isn't the World Commerce Company going to open for business? Why don't we buy it wantonly and force them to close on the same day? That way Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng will lose face. Anyway, they won't dare to do anything to us." "This is the good idea you came up with?" Feng Jiru snorted and then added heavily, "Stupid. Our immortal world's #1 sect is playing with a small sect. It's like slapping our own face and adding glory to the other party. If you want to play, you should play with something worthy." "Master is right. Please enlighten me, Master." Sun Luan smiled apologetically, but he was cursing in his heart. "No matter what you say, you're right. I won't say it, alright?" Feng Jiru paced with her hands behind her back and sneered, "What an ingenious idea." He actually left words on the waterfall and even made an eye-catching skyscraper. If a sect leader took a fancy to the World Commerce's mountain and wanted to exchange territory with them, so they issued a challenge, what do you think the outcome would be? Sun Luan's eyes immediately lit up. He clapped his hands and said, "Master is wise. It would be even better if we challenge him on the day he opens his shop. With his deity transformation cultivation he will definitely lose." But then he frowned and said hesitantly, "Master, I'm afraid ordinary sects won't dare to do this because Yu Qianqiu has Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng by his side. If they really did that, it would be the same as slapping their faces. These two experts definitely won't do anything on the spot, but the people who challenge him will definitely be afraid of revenge from these two. I'm afraid no one will dare to do this." Chapter 870. Don't boost the morale of others and belittle our own. Feng Jiru sneered, "My Heartless Palace has as many experts as there are clouds in the sky, the #1 sect in the immortal world. Let me ask you, who is more afraid of my heartless palace or those two loners? Sun Luan immediately flattered, of course it's our heartless palace. If you really provoke our heartless palace, there will be no place for Wei Chuanqiu and Yun Peng in the immortal world. Provoke? Feng Jiaoru murmured and said in a deep voice, the High Deacon has been provoked to the point where he can't find a place to vent his anger. If we can't even take care of Yu Qianqiu and attract the High Deacon's attention, then it won't just be Yu Qianqiu who will be in trouble. Both you and my disciple will be implicated. You know how terrifying the High Priest is? Sun Luan shivered when he heard that. He thought of that old man who had eyes like a hawk. Just a glance from him could make people shiver. Feng Jiaoru's expression became firm and she ordered, help me contact the sect masters of the 4 islands of Lake Light. Tell them to come see me as soon as possible. Tell them that I have a gift for them. Don't tell them what it is for now. Sun Luan said with a smile, these 4 poor sects don't have the money to establish a foothold in the illusionary immortal city. With the support of our heartless palace, they will be very willing to take over the territory of the World Commerce Association. Let's see who has the ability to snatch it. Disciple will go contact them now. The majestic Myriad Saint Mountain towered into the sky. At the peak of the misty mountain, there was a simple and majestic palace called Myriad Saint Palace. The palace was cold and quiet. Very few people came to disturb them. Wan Ling, who was wearing plain clothes, lightly crossed the threshold and walked into the depths of the palace. She slowly walked to the steps in front of her and bowed, Grandfather, are you looking for me? On the cold and aloof sapphire stone platform, Wan Bushing, who had white hair and a ruddy complexion, opened his eyes. A trace of kindness flashed in his clear eyes. He waved to the people below and said, Ling, come up and talk to Grandpa. Wan Ling's face bloomed with a smile. She lifted her white dress and ran up to sit on Wan Bushing's jade couch. Her long hair cascaded down like a waterfall. She held her head in her arms and looked at Wan Bushing with a smile. What does Grandpa want Ling to say to you? In Wan Gu Tong, other than Wan Bushing, only Wan Ling dared to casually sit on this jade couch. Even Wan Bushing's son didn't dare to touch it. It was clear how much Wan Bushing doted on Wan Ling. Wan Bushing raised his hand to touch Wan Ling's face and said with a doting expression, Ling, you really look like your grandmother. Even your temper and character are so similar. Wan Ling grabbed his hand and put it on her face. She smiled innocently and said, Grandpa misses Grandma again. Wan Bushing smiled as he pulled his hand back, pinching her nose and shaking it. Strange girl, always causing trouble for me. Don't pinch my nose. Wan Ling pushed Wan Bushing's hand away, frowning, Grandfather. From now on you are not allowed to pinch my nose. Wan Bushing was stunned. Seeing the resentment on Wan Ling's face, he burst out laughing, still holding a grudge against the person who pinched your nose and made you cry? Grandpa isn't him. How did you implicate Grandpa? Ling was taken advantage of by someone. How can you laugh as a grandfather? Wan Ling complained. Suddenly she grabbed Wan Bushing's arm, gritting her teeth. Grandfather, help me think of a way to get rid of that Yu Qianqiu, okay? A long sigh sounded in the hall. Wan Bushing shook his head. Getting rid of a small Yu Qianqiu is easy, but that immortal Emperor Jin Tai behind him is not someone Grandfather can afford to offend. Grandfather is not his opponent. For the sake of our family you have to suffer. The hall became silent. After a long time Wan Ling bit her lips and said, the immortal emperor has ruled the celestial world for so many years. Is there no one who can challenge him and let him continue to rule? This is too unfair to the people of the celestial world. You can say this here, don't spread it outside. Wan Bushing's expression became serious, then he smiled and said, let's not talk about this. What's new in the celestial world recently? Tell me about it. What's new? The entire celestial world is under the pressure of the immortal emperor, so what can happen? At most it's just some small fights. Wan Ling complained. She seemed to have a lot of resentment towards the high and mighty immortal emperor. Pausing, he continued, there are a few big events. The great consecrator of Passionless Palace, Zhu Yun Xin, and the head of Xiaoyao Palace, Chai Xiaoyao, caused a ruckus here. Now they are searching for the person who killed their first grandson. Secondly, the great commander of external affairs of the Immortal Palace, Wu Xiong, has taken a fancy to the daughter of a small merchant. They have already set the wedding date. Finally, that guy's World Merchant Association is about to open. Yes. The last matter is the reason why I asked you to come. Wan Bushing frowned and said, on the day of the World Merchant Association's opening, You should personally send a congratulatory gift. Wan Ling was startled. She immediately jumped off the jade couch and lost her temper. I'm not going. I hate seeing that person. Grandfather. If you force me to go, don't blame me if I can't control myself and cause trouble on the day of the World Merchant Association's opening. Ling Er. Stop messing around. Wan Bushing floated down from the jade couch. He landed on the ground and stared at the surging sea of clouds outside the door. He slowly said, Don't think that our Wan Gu Tong is famous in the celestial world for a while. In reality it's lonely at the top. The bigger a sect is, the easier it is for us to attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. This is also why the sect masters of large sects like us don't easily come out. Since we already know that Yu Qianshou is a secret agent sent by Old Master Jin, we should build a good relationship with him. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Who knows, maybe one day our Wan Gu Tong will run into some trouble and need his help. This Yu Qianshou is so useful, why don't we make use of him? Ling Er. Do you understand grandfather's meaning? Wan Ling pouted unhappily, I'll listen to you. Seeing that she didn't agree readily, Wan Bushing smiled and said, Ling Er. Is Grandpa Xian annoyed? If Grandpa Xian is really annoyed, then hurry up and find someone you like to marry. As long as you like him, Grandpa doesn't care about the other party's background. I will support you fully. Otherwise, it's not good for an old lady to stay by Grandpa's side all the time. Wan Ling's face immediately turned red, and a flurry of punches landed on Wan Bushing's body, complaining, Grandpa hates me and wants to chase me away. Wan Bushing laughed heartily and with a wave of his hand, a ray of light shot out from his fingers, directly binding Wan Ling's wrists together. No matter how hard Wan Ling struggled, she couldn't break free. Wan Bushing clasped his hands behind his back, and with a solemn expression he said, Grandpa isn't joking. I'm asking you now, do you have a man you like? Don't tell Grandpa that you've never liked any man, Grandpa won't believe you. After all, you're a normal woman. The moment these words came out, Wan Ling immediately stopped struggling. Instead she became a little bashful. Wan Bushing's eyes lit up and he pretended to be angry, if you don't say it, then Grandpa will decide for you. At that time, don't blame Grandpa for randomly choosing someone to marry. No. Wan Ling hurriedly stopped him. She knew that her grandfather was also a decisive person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have established such a big family business, and it was very likely that he would do as he said. Wan Bushing snorted coldly, then tell me honestly, do you have a man you like? Otherwise, you know Grandpa's temper. Wan Ling was bashful for a long time and finally lowered her head and whispered, yes. Wan Bushing's eyes lit up and he said strangely, what kind of talent can make my Linger wait for so many years? Tell Grandpa. As long as my Linger likes someone, Grandpa will help you catch that man even if it's an old man. Don't worry, Grandpa is not pedantic. Even if it's a married man, as long as you like him, Grandpa promises to snatch him for you. There must be a way to make him your man honestly. Tell me, who is it? Who wants to snatch someone's married man? Wan Ling stamped her foot, the redness on her face had already spread to her neck. She buried her head and muttered, actually, I've only seen him once and I don't even know where he's from or what his name is. How do you expect me to tell you who he is? Wan Bushing let out a long "oh," and then said strangely, then it's love at first sight, heavens. To be able to make my family's eccentric Linger fall in love at first sight, how outstanding must that person be? Don't worry, at most, Grandpa will personally make a move, I'll definitely help you get that man you like. Grandpa. Wan Ling stamped her foot again, the shyness on her face seeped into her bones. Wow. As long as you have someone you like, it'll be easy. As long as you have someone you like, then I can rest easy. You made me think that there was something wrong with you. Wan Bushing heaved a long sigh of relief, patting his chest. Tell Grandpa, when and where did you meet him and what does he look like? As long as we have these few clues with our Wan Gu Tong's influence, finding that person won't be a problem. Don't worry, Grandpa won't hesitate to use all of Wan Gu Tong's power to help you get him. Wan Ling's body trembled, biting her lip as she looked at Wan Bushing. She knew that if Wan Bushing really gave the order, they would really be able to find that person. Her heart was beating fast as she said in a low voice, that was 1,806 years ago. At that time Speaking to this point, she bit her tongue and stopped. Her expression became somewhat perplexed, as if everything that happened at that time had happened just yesterday. It was in a remote valley deep in the mountains. Wan Ling was passing by this place when she accidentally discovered a pond with rippling waves. Attracted by the clear water, Seeing that there was no one around, she couldn't resist taking off all her clothes and jumping into the pond to play. Just as she was immersed in her emotions, she suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a person standing in the reflection of the mountain. Chapter 871. This discovery scared Wanling so much that she stood in the pool, not daring to move. She didn't even dare to raise her head to look. She hugged her chest and kept telling herself that this must be an illusion. When the rippling pool water finally calmed down like a mirror, she could clearly see that on the mountain peak reflected in the water, a man in white was standing elegantly on a tree. He seemed to be staring at her naked body in the pool water. Wanling was scared out of her wits and let out a shrill scream, scaring the birds in the mountain to fly away. After realizing that she was still naked under someone else's eyes, Wanling raised her hand and summoned the clothes on the shore to wrap herself up. She hid in the water and didn't dare to come out. She looked at the white-clothed man standing on the treetop with fear and trepidation. It was a man full of scholarly aura. His face was extraordinarily handsome and his body was slender. In addition to the white robe, he completely looked like a scholar. Wanling had never been so naked in front of any man before. At this moment she was extremely shy and scared. However, what was annoying was that although the man looked gentle, his skin was not ordinary thick. He stood on the treetop without moving and looked at her with a slight smile on his face. He didn't feel ashamed at all, as if she, Wanling, should be naked for him to see. Under the shame and anger, Wanling finally mustered up the courage to shout, "Where did this shameless person come from? Hurry up and leave. If you keep looking, this lady will gouge out your pair of thieving eyes." Perhaps her threat had an effect. The scholar on the treetop suddenly disappeared without a sound. Even with Wanling's cultivation, she didn't know how he left. Wanling, who was hugging her clothes and was about to flee, was looking around cautiously when she was suddenly startled. She didn't know when the scholar had appeared behind her. He was quietly stepping on the surface of the water and looking at her with a smile. "Ah!" Wanling, who was in the pool, immediately let out a frightening scream. The scholar looked at her with a smile and ignored her, letting her continue to scream. It was also impossible for Wanling to continue screaming. Once she stopped screaming, she wrapped the clothes around her chest with one hand and desperately waved her palm at the man to send out a ray of light. This palm strike could be said to have gathered all of her cultivation, but the scholar still stood there with a smile, completely ignoring her attack. Invisible ripples appeared in the space before him, and Wanling's powerful palm strike was like a clay ox entering the sea. All the power disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened at all. Wanling instantly understood that she was not the opponent's opponent at all. She immediately screamed, "Help!" She didn't care anymore. She hugged her clothes and fled quickly. However, something even scarier happened. Wanling clearly saw the scenery around her fly by. She didn't know how far she had escaped, but when she stopped, she found that she was no different from not moving at all. He was still in the pool, only that he had run out of the pool and his feet were on the surface of the pool. In this way the other party would be able to see his body more clearly. "Ah!" Wanling screamed crazily as if she had seen a ghost. However, she was horrified to find that she couldn't hear her voice at all. The scholar opposite her walked over with a smile, raised his hand and pointed at her lightly. The clothes that wrapped around her body suddenly disappeared inexplicably. What happened next almost made Wanling collapse. She wanted to squat down and hug her arms to cover her body, but she found that she couldn't control her body at all. Her thoughts were very clear, and she didn't realize that her body was being held hostage by an external force. However, she shamelessly stretched out her arms, exposing her chest to the other party. Wanling watched as the other party's slender fingers touched her body. She couldn't close her eyes even if she wanted to. She could feel the other party's cold hands moving around her body, touching her full breasts and perky buttocks one by one. Wanling immediately burst into tears and choked, "Stop! Why are you crying?" The scholar appeared in front of her and gently hooked her chin with his finger. He smiled faintly and said, "There are so many women who want to strip for me, but I don't care about them. You should feel lucky that it's a coincidence today." His voice was very pleasant to the ears, and his faint tone was filled with unquestionable confidence. It was as if everyone should bow down to him. As he spoke, Wanling's heart stirred. Her breathing quickened and her heart thumped non-stop. The other party's deep and wise gaze was pressing in. Her chin was hooked up and their lips were pressed together. The scent that belonged to a man made Wanling a little confused. The other party's lips were a little cold. Unknowingly, Wanling found that she had opened her lips, and their tongues were mixed together. She was actually a little infatuated with his nimble tongue. It was also at this moment that Wan Ling found that her body had regained its freedom and she could move. She could have pushed him away, but she impulsively made a bold decision. She took the initiative to hug the other party, and kissed him passionately, hoping that the other party would take the next step. However, the other party seemed to be a little too rational. In this moment of passion, he actually slowly pushed her away and told her with a smile, "We've only met by chance, so we should stop. It's enough that we've tasted it. The women I've kissed can hate me, but they can't be sad because of me. If we continue, I'm afraid you'll be sad." Wan Ling was also a woman who was used to seeing the world. She was just panicking before, but now that she had calmed down, she more or less realized that the other party didn't have any evil intentions towards her, so she boldly said, "In the immortal world, there aren't many people who dare to treat me like this. You've already treated me like this, so you have to be responsible for me." "Be responsible for you?" The scholar shook his head and chuckled. He looked at her luxuriant lower body and teased, "I don't think I've done anything excessive to you. It's just a hug and a kiss, and you actually want me to be responsible for you? You're making things difficult for me." Wan Ling bit her lips and said, "I don't care. I've never let other men see my body. You've seen it and you've touched it, so you have to be responsible for me. Otherwise, I won't let you go." What a big tone. You're actually threatening me? The scholar shook his head and chuckled. He turned around and said, "If you have the chance to know who I am, you'll naturally know that your request is too excessive. Stop." Wan Ling hugged her chest and shouted, "A big man dares to take responsibility for his actions. If you have the ability, then tell me your name." The scholar turned around and smiled, "If I tell you my name, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear it. It's better if you don't know." At this moment, a golden light suddenly flashed in the sky. The scholar raised his head and looked. Then, without saying anything, he disappeared in front of Wan Ling. "Stop. Come back here. You haven't told me your name." "Shameless." Wan Ling anxiously shouted, but no one paid attention to her. She quickly took out a set of clothes from her storage bracelet and put them on. Then she searched everywhere within a radius of a few hundred miles. However, from that day onwards, after 1,000 years, Wan Ling almost searched the entire immortal world, but she never saw the shadow of that scholar again. That scholar was like a mystery. It was as if what happened that day was like a dream. There was no trace of it. Only the cold touch of his lips was still fresh in her memory. It was also from that day onwards, that scholar's shadow became the thing that haunted her. In many dreams she saw his appearance and woke up with joy. After waking up, there was only emptiness and disappointment. Wan Ling didn't know what was wrong with her. From then on she didn't like other men. No matter how outstanding the men she met were, she couldn't help but compare them with that scholar. In the end she found that there was no comparison at all. That scholar gave off a sense of transcendence that those vulgar men couldn't compare with. The difference was too great. In the end, Wan Ling sadly found that other than that scholar, she didn't like any other man. If she hadn't come into contact with such a man, then it would have been fine. However, she just had to meet him. Thus, a standard was set in her heart and she always used it to measure other men. If she wasn't Wan Bushing's granddaughter and was just the daughter of an ordinary family, she would have given up. However, she was Wan Bushing's granddaughter. She had enough bargaining chips. From then on, as time went by, Wan Ling gradually had a strange habit. She couldn't bear to see other men and women in love. If the love of the other party stimulated her too much, she would do something like snatching the love away. She had seduced other men more than once. After the other party broke up, she would kick the man she seduced, creating a lot of tragedies for others. This was why Wan Bushing said that he was worried that she had a problem. Just think, how could a normal woman always do this kind of thing? Wan Ling had been playing other men in the palm of her hand all these years. In addition, with Wan Bushing's support, it could be said that she had never suffered losses from other men. But unfortunately, she met Yu Qianqiu. This guy was not easy to deal with. He was originally a rogue and there was nothing he didn't dare to do. He never acted according to common sense, and he always used unscrupulous means to achieve his goals. Finally, he ruthlessly tricked Wan Ling, which made Wan Ling gnash her teeth in hatred, but there was nothing she could do. "Ling, why don't you continue?" Seeing that she was in a daze for a long time, Wan Bushing finally couldn't help urging her. If he didn't solve the problem of his precious granddaughter's marriage, it would really make him anxious. Because some old guys had already asked him if his granddaughter had a problem. He almost couldn't get out of the situation several times. I don't believe that he will never appear. Wan Ling bit her lip and woke up from her daze. After thinking about it, she still didn't want to tell the embarrassing story of her meeting with the scholar. She looked at Wan Bushing and said, "Grandpa, let me find him myself. I believe that I will find him. If I find him, Grandpa, please help me." As she said that, she raised her wrists that were bound by the black light, showing a delicate and pitiful look. Chapter 872. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce, which had been in dire straits before, had now been refurbished and the number of people working for it had suddenly increased. Nan Tianlong was going in and out of the entrance, welcoming and sending off guests from all over. The Four Links Chamber of Commerce had swept away its decadent trend and business was abnormally prosperous. Everyone in the town knew. In fact, it wasn't just the people in the town. Everyone in the immortal world knew that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's current situation was all thanks to one person. That was the Grand Commander of the Immortal Palace's external affairs, Wu Xiong. It was precisely because of the engagement between Wu Xiong and Mu Tianjiao that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce had undergone earth-shattering changes. As for the other large Bada Chamber of Commerce in the town, it had already been completely exterminated. Not a single person was left. The uprooting of the Eight Links Chamber of Commerce made the other small chambers of commerce in the town tremble with fear. When the Four Links Chamber of Commerce declined, there were many people who hit them when they were down, so they all moved out to avoid the brunt. At this point, only the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was left in the town. Even so, the town wasn't deserted, but rather flourished because of the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's rapid rise. The vicissitudes of life, the ups and downs, could be seen from this. Mu Bing came out of the main hall with a group of flattering people. After letting Nan Tianlong send off the guests, he turned to look at the backyard. His daughter, who had originally taken over the Chamber of Commerce's affairs, had agreed to the engagement with Wu Xiong's matchmaker. Then, she returned the Chamber of Commerce's affairs to him and rarely left the backyard. Mu Bing had always been apprehensive, vaguely feeling that his daughter didn't like this marriage at all. However, she still forced a smile and agreed to it. Even he couldn't stop it. At this time, Tao Zhong, who had become Mu Bing's trusted aide, walked over with large strides. He chuckled as he walked over and handed over a flyer. "President, the Immortal Palace is really efficient. The flyer that eldest Miss wanted to see came in just a few days. They said it was the original flyer that the World Chamber of Commerce distributed in hallucinatory Immortal City." Mu Bing took the flyer and glanced at its contents. He shook his head with a wry smile. This kid has been causing quite a stir in the immortal world recently. It can be said that he's in the limelight. He then waved his hand at Tao Zhong. "Go help Tianlong greet the guests. I will personally deliver this to you. If there are any unimportant guests looking for me, just tell them I'm not free today and ask them to come back tomorrow." Not so long ago, when had the Four Links Chamber of Commerce ever had the qualifications to treat their customers like this? But the present was no longer the same. Tao Zhong smiled and cupped his hands. "Understood. I'll go right now." Looking at Tao Zhong's departing figure, Mu Bing stood silently for a while. This person was originally Mu Tianjiao's right-hand man, but now he had become her right-hand man. Mu Bing couldn't help but sigh as he turned around and walked towards the backyard. In the backyard, the plants were verdant and the flowers were delicate, attracting many butterflies and bees. As soon as Mu Bing walked in, he heard the sound of soil being shoveled from the dense nursery. He followed the sound and saw Mu Tianjiao squatting in the nursery with a small shovel to cultivate the soil for a rose that still had dew on it. Mu Tianjiao asked without raising her head, "Father, why are you here? Isn't it very busy outside?" Mu Bing glanced around and found that the originally barren nursery was now filled with roses. He couldn't help but curiously ask, "How did you fall in love with roses?" Mu Tianjiao gently smiled as she busied herself. "I accidentally heard Tao Zhong mention it and suddenly felt that I liked it, so I planted it. He said that roses are cold and drought resistant. They don't have high requirements for soil and are very adaptable. The worse the environment, the brighter they bloom, and they can compete with other flowers for fragrance. But there are also drawbacks. They don't like sunlight as much as some flowers. If there's too much sunlight, the petals will easily dry up and lose their luster." Mu Bing trembled as he looked at his daughter's attire. Her originally valiant and formidable-looking attire had now been changed into a woman's attire. His voice trembled as he asked, "Tianjiao, are you talking about yourself?" The small shovel paused for a moment before continuing. Mu Tianjiao lightly smiled. "Father, you're thinking too much. Flowers are flowers and I am me. How can we be confused? Now that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's business is getting better, it must be very busy. Please forgive me for being unfilial. I want to be lazy before I get married. Please forgive me, Father. Are you blaming Father in your heart? Mu Bing smiled miserably. Yes, it's all because I'm useless. I have to rely on my daughter's life in exchange for the Chamber of Commerce's future. Qinjiao, if you don't want to marry Wu Xiong, then tell me honestly. Don't lie to me. I'd rather the Four Links Chamber of Commerce collapse than let you be unhappy for the rest of your life. I'm going to break off this marriage. The small shovel stabbed into the ground. Mu Tianjiao stood up and turned to Mu Bing with a smile. Father, you're really thinking too much. If I didn't like it, why would I agree? Don't you know your daughter's temperament? No one can force your daughter to submit. Is it true? Mu Bing stared at Mu Tianjiao. Tell me if it's true. Don't lie to me. Mu Tianjiao didn't dare to look straight at him. She shifted her gaze and said, Of course it's true. Suddenly, she saw the list in Mu Bing's hand and exclaimed softly, What's that in Father's hand? Mu Bing was startled, then smiled. Haven't you always been paying attention to the World Chamber of Commerce's news? You said the rumors are unreliable? As he spoke, he handed the list to his daughter. This is what Tao Zhong asked Wu Xiong to send to protect you. It said that the World Chamber of Commerce distributed the original flyer in Fantasy Immortal City. You used Wu Xiong's men? Mu Tianjiao's outstretched hand trembled slightly. Then she took the flyer and looked at it. On it was written, Thanks to everyone's care, the World Chamber of Commerce will officially open on the 25th of this month. At that time, friends from all over are welcome to come and support us. World Chamber of Commerce's President cum Sect Master, Yu Qianqiu, thanks. It's fine to use Wu Xiong's men, right? Mu Bing hesitated. A trace of helplessness flashed across Mu Tianjiao's face. She forced a smile and said, Father, Wu Xiong's men are also from the Immortal Palace. When have you ever heard of a sect having the right to command the Immortal Palace's men? Wu Xiong sending people to protect us is his kind intentions, but we can't justify using the Immortal Palace's men. Since we've already done it this time, let's forget about it. However, I hope that Father won't do something like this again. Being able to borrow the power of the Immortal Palace is already enough for our Four Links Chamber of Commerce to develop. Don't go overboard or you'll bring disaster upon yourself. You must know that the master of the Immortal Palace is the Immortal Emperor, not Wu Xiong. I hope that Father will remember this. Hearing his daughter's words, Mu Bing also reacted. He knew that this matter wasn't appropriate. If he angered the Immortal Emperor, even 10 Wu Xiong's wouldn't be able to protect him. Thinking about the possible consequences of this matter, he felt a lingering fear. On the side, Mu Tianjiao tilted her head to look at the flyer in her hand and faintly sighed. World Commerce's President and Sect Master Yu Qianqiu? I originally thought that our Four Links Chamber of Commerce was already developing fast enough. Who would have thought that this Yu Qianqiu has already established his own Chamber of Commerce in the psychedelic Immortal City? I wasn't wrong about him. He's a capable person. Truly amazing. Don't worry. It won't be long before we can also buy our own mountain in the psychedelic Immortal City and open our business. At that time, I'll add another 40 billion and register the Four Links Chamber of Commerce as a full-service Chamber of Commerce. We'll carry forward our Mu family's ancestral business. No matter how much she explained, she could only pave the way. Mu Tianjiao bit her lips and said, Father, after all, I fought alongside Yu Qianqiu in the Divine Ruin Realm. Now that his World Chamber of Commerce has opened, I want to personally send a congratulatory gift to congratulate him. Chapter 873. You're going to personally deliver the gift? Mu Bing's brows furrowed as he tried to persuade her. You have an extraordinary status now. Many people want to meet you but they're not qualified. No matter how powerful Yu Qianqiu is, he'll have to behave himself in front of the Immortal Palace. Your future man is the Immortal Palace's External Affairs Commander, Wu Xiong. What right does Yu Qianqiu have for you to personally congratulate him? In my opinion, it's enough for Tao Zhong to make a trip. Father. Mu Tianjiao shouted. Her eyes suddenly became fierce as she said word by word, Yu Qianqiu relies on himself. We rely on Wu Xiong. Are you sure we can rely on him for a lifetime? Mu Bing's expression stiffened. He was stunned for a moment before he said embarrassedly, Don't tell me we still have to rely on you, Qianqiu? It's not a question of who to rely on. Mu Tianjiao's words carried a hint of anger. Isn't it good to have a friend with potential? Isn't it good to have more connections? Do you really want the Four Links Chamber of Commerce to walk a single log bridge while trembling in fear? The atmosphere between father and daughter instantly became a little awkward. Mu Bing didn't dare to look directly at Mu Tianjiao's eyes. He tilted his head and said weakly, "Then it's up to you." No matter how disappointing the other party was, he was still her father. Mu Tianjiao's eyes then softened. She smiled weakly and said, "If I get married, I'm afraid father will be lonely. Father, you might as well marry a few more wives." Mu Bing looked at her dumbfounded. There was actually a daughter who told her father to marry a few more wives. "Father, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else." Mu Tianjiao smiled and explained, "I believe that the Four Links Chamber of Commerce's family business will grow bigger and bigger. No matter how big the family business is, it needs someone to inherit it. Father, why don't you help me give birth to a few younger brothers and sisters?" She had completely lost hope in her father. The reason why she persuaded her father to remarry was because she hoped that one of her younger brothers and sisters would appear. She could also take advantage of her position as Wu Xiong's woman to support him. Over and over again it was to protect and develop the family business. It could be said that she had put in a lot of effort. However, Mu Bing couldn't understand his daughter's painstaking efforts. He was too embarrassed to discuss this topic with his daughter, so he found an excuse to run away. Mu Tianjiao looked at her father's back as he left. She stood alone in the courtyard, desolation creeping up her face. Actually, she was not willing to marry Wu Xiong. She was also a proud and arrogant woman. Although the immortal palace was strong, she did not want to live under someone else's roof. She would rather rely on her own hands to revitalize the family business. What others gave her was not as comfortable as what she had earned with her own hands. Most importantly, he didn't have any feelings for Wu Xiong at all. But since Wu Xiong had already sent someone to propose marriage, what qualifications did her tiny Four Links Chamber of Commerce have to refuse? The consequences of refusing would be a disaster for the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. In the face of this sudden change, the strong pressure made Mu Tianjiao unable to resist at all. It would have been fine if she was alone, but she couldn't let go of her family at all. Her mother had sacrificed herself for this family. She had to protect this family no matter what. In the end, she could only compromise and sacrifice herself in order to agree to this marriage. Mu Tianjiao flattened the flyer that had been crumpled into a ball in her hand once again. She looked at the handwriting on it and bitterly smiled as she muttered, "Since Wu Xiong took a liking to me, that means I have some good points. But why is it that when I shamelessly confess to you, you don't feel anything for me at all? No matter how strong I am, I'm still a woman. Is it wrong to want to find a man I like to shelter me from the wind and rain? You said you only want to be a free wandering cultivator, but you single-handedly created the World Chamber of Commerce. You big liar, how can I endure this? The World Chamber of Commerce, the world. Aspire to the world. What a great ambition, but why can't it accommodate a weak woman like me?" The entire immortal realm was divided into a total of 13 immortal provinces. 12 of these provinces were each presided over by 12 immortal monarchs. The immortal province where the illusionary immortal city was located was called the Immortal Bestowal Province. It was the largest of the 13 immortal provinces and was personally presided over by Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. The name of the province implied that Immortal Emperor Jin Tai had bestowed the immortals of the immortal realm. The Immortal Bestowal Province had an immortal paradise called the Paradise Immortal Realm. The Paradise Immortal Realm was vast and covered in mist. There were countless plants and monsters, immortal grasses and immortal beasts all over the vast mountains and lofty ridges. The misty mountain range was filled with numerous experts of the immortal realm. It was the place with the highest concentration of top experts in the entire immortal realm. If outsiders wanted to trespass this place, they would simply be courting death. The mountains of the Paradise Immortal Realm slowly arched up from all directions towards the center. In the misty immortal mist, there was a majestic scene. There were immortal birds circling in the sky, there was purple mist coming from the east, and there was an aurora that shrouded the place. Even in the middle of the night, this place was still a place that never slept. A domineering aura that shook the hearts of the people was vast and mighty. For some reason, the central peak of the Paradise Immortal Realm was split into two near the top. One section was like a crouching tiger and a coiling dragon that still stood tall on the vast earth, while the other section, which was dozens of miles in circumference, suddenly floated in the air. In the cloudy sky, a magnificent golden palace was faintly discernible. This was the famous Immortal Palace, the residence of immortal Emperor Jianghu. It was built on the floating mountain peak. Golden streams of light flashed in and out of the lingering clouds and mist. This magnificent palace silently deterred the entire immortal realm, making all living beings in the immortal realm submit to it. On the secondary peak next to the main peak, there was a newly built palace. Rather than calling it a palace, it was more appropriate to call it a small courtyard. Not a single piece of metal could be seen in the entire courtyard. It was all built with all kinds of jade and jadeite. It was as translucent as an exquisite palace or a crystal palace, extremely beautiful and enchanting. This palace was built under the order of immortal Emperor Jianghu in one day. If it weren't for the repeated refusal of the owner of this place, this crystal palace would be even more magnificent and enchanting, and wouldn't look like a small courtyard. The owner of this palace. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe him as a guest, because the owner of this place did not regard himself as the owner of this place. He only regarded himself as a temporary guest. However, what was surprising was that within the walls of such a luxurious crystal palace, there was actually a simple thatched hut. There was intermittent music coming from the thatched hut, and there was a man singing a scary song with a duck-like voice. It was not an ordinary kind of unpleasant song. On the jade steps of the palace gate not far from the thatched hut, stood a dazzling beauty. She was dressed in a snow-white palace dress that wrapped around her graceful figure. Her beauty could topple a city. Her skin was as smooth as cream, her eyes were bright, and her teeth were white. She was dignified and charming, and her temperament was noble and compelling. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled. The beauty in the palace dress slowly walked into the jade pavilion next to the thatched hut. She shouted into the thatched hut, "Brother Crocodile." The music that sounded like an old ox pulling a broken cart stopped. A tall figure in a silver robe with silver hair down to his shoulders walked out of the thatched hut with a guqin in his arms. He walked happily to the pavilion and sat down, then placed the guqin on the jade table. The former immortal crocodile, now Ishuejuan, smiled and said, "Sister Jiwu, how was my guqin playing? How was my singing?" Jiwu stared at him with a pair of bright eyes and was speechless for a long time. She said, "You know I don't like to lie. Your guqin and singing are really not good. It's really unpleasant to listen to. I, your little sister, feel suffocated listening to it, so I came to stop you." "You are really direct." Ishuejuan smiled and scratched his head. He said, "In fact, I also know that it's not good, but everything is difficult at the beginning. I will eventually practice. I don't believe that I can't beat that brat." Jiwu looked around and set up a soundproof enchantment. She sat opposite Ishuejuan and looked at the thatched hut. She frowned and said, "Why do you do this? This is clearly a silent protest. In Jingtai's eyes, it will only make him hate you more and he will not let you go." Ishuejuan looked back at the thatched hut he built and said indifferently, "I have worked for him for many years, but I didn't expect to end up like this. From the day he wanted to kill me, we are even. From now on, I will not take advantage of him. I can live in peace in my own grass nest." Jiwu smiled bitterly and shook her head. "This is the celestial realm, his world. No one can beat him. Everyone has no choice. Why are you so stubborn? Saving your own life is the most important thing. There are many things that are beyond your control. Why don't you marry him and become his celestial empress?" Ishuejuan said with a playful face. "That position is below 1 and above 10,000. Many women in the celestial realm dream of it." Jiwu frowned and said angrily, "I, Jiwu, have not reached the point where I have to sell my body for glory." "What a joke. What a joke. Sister, don't be angry." After Ishuejuan waved her hand again and again, she raised her head and sighed, "In fact, you and I are both under house arrest here. It's up to Jingtai to kill us. It depends on how long his patience lasts. When he loses his patience and wants to use force, how will you deal with it? I don't really care. I've already died twice. The first time was because I was saved by that stinky brat, and the second time was because you saved me from Kintai's hands. I can't repay you for saving my life twice. Now we can only take it one step at a time." Jiwu shook her head and did not want to talk about such a heavy topic. Her eyes fell on the guqin on the table. She said strangely, "Brother E is in a good mood. Why do you want to play the guqin and sing? Is it to vent?" "Vent my ass. I think of that brat. Since I got out of the human world, I have the most fun with that brat." Ishuejuan touched the strings of the guqin and said, Don't be fooled by that brat. In fact, his music is unparalleled. No one in the world can beat him. Don't judge a book by its cover. Jianghu hesitated. Do you still suspect that the Yu Qianqiu who founded the World Chamber of Commerce in the celestial realm is the same Yu Qianqiu in the human world? Shuejuan rolled his eyes and said, What doubt? I'm sure it is that guy. Besides him, I can't think of any other Yu Qianqiu who would mess around like this. Chapter 874. Maybe it's just the same name. Besides, establishing a chamber of commerce is not fooling around. It only shows that this person is ambitious. Jianghu didn't agree and said, Plus you also know that it's impossible for that world to come to the immortal realm with the power of a deified spirit. He shouldn't be Yu Qianqiu. Why not? Shuejuan counted with his fingers. First, the name Yu Qianqiu is too rare. The probability of them sharing the same name is too low. Secondly, the two of them just so happen to be at the deity transformation stage. Only that guy would dare to establish a chamber of commerce with a deity transformation stage cultivation. Third, don't be fooled by his soul formation cultivation. In fact, both of them are extraordinary. It is entirely possible for them to come to the immortal realm. Master and disciple? Have you met his master? Hearing him praise the master and disciple, Jianghu couldn't help but ask, Who is his master? Shuejuan was in a dilemma. Should he answer or not? His reaction made Jianghu even more curious. A trace of craftiness flashed through her bright eyes as she said, Is it not convenient to reveal it to a girl? If it's inconvenient, then don't say it. Shuejuan was embarrassed to hide it. After all, she saved his life. He hesitated and said, It's not that I don't want to tell you, but I'm afraid you will be angry. Angry? Jianghu suddenly giggled and said, Do you think we have the right to be angry when we are imprisoned in this place? Brother E doesn't understand me. I'm not a narrow-minded person. I don't need to be angry about everything. If there is anyone I can't forgive, it is Yi Zhao's disciple, slaying Luo. I didn't expect them to return to the immortal realm. Don't let me leave this place. Once I leave, I will not let any of them go. Jianghu stared at Shuejuan sharply. Don't tell me that Yu Qianqiu's master is slaying Luo? If that's the case, then I'm sorry, brother Shuejuan. I will not let Yu Qianqiu go either. As long as it's someone from the Rakshasa faction, I won't let a single one of them go. The resentment in her words was so deep that it was unforgettable. It could be seen that the sneak attack by the Rakshasa and the others when she was heavily injured had indeed hurt her heart. Shuejuan waved his hand and said, Sister, don't misunderstand. Yu Qianqiu's master is definitely not Rakshasa. Rakshasa is not even qualified to carry his master's shoes. Jianghu was surprised. She asked suspiciously, Yu Qianqiu has such a powerful teacher? Could he be one of the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world? That's not right. I have no enmity with the 12 immortal dukes, so there's no need for me to be angry over them. Actually, there's no harm in telling you. I just hope that you can keep it a secret. After all, Yu Qianqiu is my benefactor. I don't want to hurt him, said Shuejuan with a bitter smile. Jianghu nodded curiously as a form of assurance. Shuejuan knew that she was a person of her word. Without hesitation, he said slowly, In fact, you have met his master and fought with him. His master is the one who seriously injured you in the Heaven and Earth universe formation. Bai Changchun. Jianghu exclaimed in shock. His master is the Bai Changchun who challenged the Emperor of the Underworld in the Underworld world. Thinking of the green-robed elder, she still had lingering fear. The majestic fighting spirit contained in that thin figure made people respect and fear him. He was really a character. In the Heaven and Earth universe formation, the scene of 4 middle-stage immortal emperor experts fighting him together was still vivid in Jianghu's mind. Yes, he is Yu Qianqiu's master. Shuejuan sighed with a complicated expression. From the first time I saw him, I knew he was a belligerent, but he did have some extraordinary abilities. I didn't expect him to be so crazy that he had the courage to challenge a terrifying character like the Emperor of the Underworld. He was seriously injured by the Emperor of the Underworld, but he still managed to escape. The Emperor of the Underworld has lost face this time. This Bai Changchun has undoubtedly shaken the authority of the Emperor of the Underworld, letting the people in the Underworld know that the Emperor of the Underworld is not invincible. I'm afraid the old monsters in the Underworld will be restless. The Underworld will be in chaos. Jianghu was speechless. She really didn't expect that the master of the guy she didn't even want to look at was actually Bai Changchun. Her master had seriously injured her, and his disciple had saved her life at a critical moment. What was this? But now she believed Heir Shuejuan's words. That Yu Qianqiu might really be the current Yu Qianqiu in the immortal world. Brother Heir, you don't have to look at me like that. Jiwu shook her head and smiled bitterly. Come to think of it, that guy also saved my life. His master is his master and he is him. I'm not so narrow-minded as to blame his master's wrongs on him. Since he came to the immortal world and saved our lives, shouldn't we send a congratulatory gift to him now that his World Chamber of Commerce is about to open? You want to send him a congratulatory gift? Heir Shuejuan was a little speechless. He remembered that Yu Qianqiu touched Ji Wu's buttocks when she was unconscious. If Ji Wu knew about it, she would rather let Luo Sha and the others go than let Yu Qianqiu go. Ahem. Don't send a congratulatory gift. If the two of us send a congratulatory gift, I'm afraid it will immediately attract Jin Tai's attention. That will hurt him. Heir Shuejuan quickly stopped them. Ji Wu was molested in front of him and he felt bad. If Ji Wu gave a gift to the person who molested her, Heir Shuejuan would not be able to bear it. So, he quickly found a reasonable reason to stop them. As for the matter of Ji Wu being touched by Yu Qianqiu, Heir Shuejuan decided to keep it to himself. He must not tell anyone. Otherwise Ji Wu would fall out with him. Every time he thought of this, Heir Shuejuan gritted his teeth. That kid did something shameful, and I have to take the initiative to cover it up for him. Ji Wu nodded slowly when she heard the words. Brother Heir is thoughtful. That will indeed hurt him. Heir Shuejuan was speechless. He picked up the guqin on the table, and his radish-like fingers plucked the strings, making a sound like an old cow pulling a broken cart. He wailed like a ghost and howled like a wolf to cover up his inner embarrassment. I have a flower planted in my heart, budding and waiting to bloom. Day and night, I eagerly await those who have the heart to come to my dream. The hoarse voice, coupled with the ghostly howl, immediately made Ji Wu's expression change. She immediately got up to leave. Although Heir Shuejuan's singing was terrible, the lyrics were still very clear. Every word was enough to make people tremble. When Ji Wu heard the lyrics clearly, she became absent-minded in an instant. She actually patiently listened to it. As she listened, Ji Wu was a little absent-minded along with Heir Shuejuan's ghostly howl. She muttered, After love, you know the importance of love. After getting drunk, you know the strength of wine. Flowers bloom and fade in the end. Fate does not stay like the spring breeze that comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream. After the song ended, Heir Shuejuan found that Ji Wu was actually listening to him seriously. He immediately said in surprise, Sister Ji Wu, what do you think? Did I make a lot of progress this time? Ji Wu came back to her senses when she heard the words. Her jade-like hand touched her forehead and she said weakly, It's very unpleasant to listen to, but... Hearing the first two sentences, Heir Shuejuan suddenly became depressed. However, when he heard the word, but, he suddenly became energetic again. His eyes lit up and he asked, But what? I'm listening and I'm willing to listen to your advice. Ji Wu smiled faintly, looking at him up and down with some admiration. She showed an incredulous expression and said, Although the song is unpleasant, I really can't see it. I didn't expect Brother Heir to be a person who is rough but delicate. You can actually write such beautiful lyrics. It's really profound. Those who don't understand the heart of women can't write it. I was deeply immersed in it just now. I really like it. I'm ashamed to say that I have underestimated Brother Heir. Then you think too highly of me now. Heir Shuejuan was dumbfounded on the spot. His mouth twitched 3 times and he asked dryly, Is there nothing good about the song I sang except the lyrics? This? Ji Wu looked at him and she couldn't bear to say too much to provoke him, so she euphemistically said, Everyone's appreciation ability is different, and my appreciation ability is indeed limited. Maybe many people will like Brother Crocodile's rough and forthright singing, but there is no doubt that I really like the lyrics written by Brother Crocodile. Hearing this evaluation, Heir Shuejuan almost burst into tears. These words were too embarrassing. He thought he was right. His lips trembled and he said, I wrote the lyrics. I didn't write the lyrics at all. It was Yu Qianqiu, that bastard who had nothing better to do. I just borrowed it. As he said that, he raised his arms and shouted, Oh my God! I have no face to see anyone. I'm ashamed. I won't do such a shameful thing anymore. Then, with a slap, the strings of the zither broke and the zither was completely destroyed. Although Immortal Crocodile had always treated Ji Wu as a younger sister, she was still a beautiful woman. It was really shameful to be so shamelessly embarrassed in front of a beautiful woman. After smashing the zither, he covered his face with both hands and scolded himself. Jianghu bent down to pick up a string, straightened it in her hand and murmured, "I have a flower, the fragrance of the flowers fills the branches, who will sincerely seek its traces." Immortal Crocodile put down his hands and said in surprise, "What did you say?" Jianghu was startled and then said with a smile, "I said I couldn't tell, but I didn't expect you Qianqiu to be such a talented guy." Sigh. Immortal Crocodile used both hands to push his messy silver hair to the back of his shoulders, shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Not just you, I have been with him for so long and I can't tell. That time, after he was forced to show a little of his skills, I realized that this guy actually knows how to play with the instruments that women play with. But you don't say, even I, who don't understand music, think that the kid is really good at playing and singing. It's like the sound of heaven. At that time, I heard people say that he made a few songs, and each of them is a masterpiece of the world." Chapter 875. The song is the masterpiece of the human world? Jianghu smiled faintly. "Brother, he really thinks highly of your little brother. Is it as exaggerated as you say?" Ishuejuan waved his hand disapprovingly. "Anyway, I have never heard such a beautiful song, but I can't help it if you don't believe me. Anyway, I can't say anything about this nonsense." He was too lazy to explain, but Jianghu seemed to be very interested. She wanted to get to the bottom of it. She smiled and said, "You and I have nothing to do. Why don't we have a chat? By the way, you said that Yu Qianqiu was forced to show his skills. What happened? Could it be that he could be forced to play the zither and compose the song?" "Ah, it's not the kind of coercion you said. It's like this." Ishuejuan still had a little conscience. He did not expose all of Yu Qianqiu's secrets. He only told the story of the day in Lingfang Valley. A love triangle story about Yu Qianqiu, Lu Yanqing, and when Lanfeng was talked about by him in his free time. After listening to the story, Jianghu understood the composition of the song. However, women seemed to be more interested in love stories. This was a common problem for women. She said suspiciously, "You mean that the woman named Lu Yanqing is the most beautiful woman in the world, and Lu Yanqing fell in love with Yu Qianqiu and expressed her love to him, but Yu Qianqiu politely refused?" Speaking of this, Ishuejuan suddenly slapped his thigh and laughed. He shook his head and said, "In fact, Lu Yanqing is really beautiful. She is not much inferior to you. In my opinion, she is just not as good as you in temperament. However, such a delicate beauty mustered up the courage to take the initiative to express her love, but she was rejected by that guy in such a straightforward way. Thinking about it, it's amazing." Jiwu's eyes flickered and said, "Straightforward way? What way?" Ishuejuan smirked and said, "That kid said that I'm a rough guy, and I'm more interested in the topic of having sex with women. I don't like the topic of flirting. You should talk to someone who understands." That brat patted his buttocks and left after he finished speaking. He really made us men proud, ha. He's more interested in the topic of going to bed with a woman. This brat is really a man among men, Halfway through his laughter, he suddenly couldn't laugh anymore. Only then did he realize that the person sitting opposite him was also a woman. He quickly cupped his hands in apology and said, "Sister, please don't blame me. I'm also a boorish man." Ji Wu's face was flushed, and she looked even more beautiful. She said mercilessly, "No man is good. I thought he was talented, but he's just a scum." Ishueju nodded and said, "Yes, yes, yes. How can that guy be called refined? It's best to describe him as scum. I've always disliked this guy. Scum, he's definitely scum. He's not a good person." However, even though Ji Wu scolded him, she asked, "Didn't you say that several of his songs in the human world are masterpieces? Even if you don't know how to sing them, you should remember the lyrics. Since we have nothing to do, why don't you read it to me?" "I really can't read this." Immortal Crocodile scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "I happened to be there just now. Because that kid's performance was so good, I couldn't help but remember it. The other masterpieces and so on are all from other people. I haven't heard them before, so I don't know if they're good or not." "I see." Ji Wu smiled casually, but there was a hint of disappointment in her bright eyes. Because the World Chamber of Commerce in Fantasy Immortal City was about to open, the preparation work became heavy. However, there were still some clues. Under Sikongju's suggestion, Yu Qianqiu sent Sikongju back and replaced him with his junior, Jing Yuankong. This was because when Yin Baikong was alive, Jing Yuankong was the main person in charge of the World Chamber of Commerce's business. while Sikongju was mostly in charge of external affairs. In terms of business management ability, Sikongju was indeed inferior to Jing Yuankong. After Jing Yuankong arrived, with Yu Qianzhou's full trust, he immediately adjusted the World Chamber of Commerce's operations in an orderly manner and started training the staff. As a result, the conference room on the 21st floor had a few meetings almost every day. Yu Qianzhou also learned like a good student, and the teacher was naturally Jing Yuankong. After a few business talks, everyone felt a little emotional. It was no wonder Yin Baikong could support such a huge World Chamber of Commerce in the human world. He was indeed good at doing business. However, Jing Yuankong told everyone that these were just some superficial things. Doing business was actually a very systematic knowledge. Experience was the foundation. Things that were too complicated were useless just by talking about it. Everyone had to integrate into it and put it into practice. Yu Qianzhou also didn't expect everyone here to become experts in making money for the World Chamber of Commerce. After all, the opening day was not far away. He mainly let Jing Yuankong teach everyone some business rules and instill the attitude that the customer is the immortal emperor. They shouldn't be used to being the overlord of a region and fight with the other party because they couldn't take it lying down. That would be a mess. Thus, Yu Qianzhou specially arranged for them to practice on the spot. One side would act as the bullied seller while the other side would act as the purposely difficult buyer. Wei Chuanxiu, who had always been following behind Yu Qianzhou, understood these people after a period of time and gradually felt that it was strange. He realized that although the people Yu Qianzhou recruited didn't seem to have much of a cultivation, they were all experts who could stand on their own. In terms of ability, they were definitely not the same cultivation disciples of the large sects or aristocratic families in the immortal world could compare to. If it wasn't for the fact that these people's cultivation were a little lacking, their ability to handle matters would definitely be comparable to some sect masters. They were all extremely slick and had very strong minds. They weren't like those itinerant cultivators who lived cautiously in the immortal world. No matter how you looked at them, they were all seasoned veterans. Especially after attending a few of Jing Yuankong's lessons, he felt that it was even more outrageous. This was simply a veteran who had experienced many battles in the business world. With such rich business experience, any sect would fight to have such a talent. Why was it a soul formation initial stage itinerant cultivator? Why would such talents flock to the World Chamber of Commerce? Wei Chuanxiu couldn't figure out the reason no matter how he racked his brains. He could only lament that there were indeed many outstanding people in the wilderness. No wonder the top experts in the immortal world were often itinerant cultivators and itinerant immortals. On the 25th of the month, the day that everyone anticipated the grand opening of the World Chamber of Commerce had finally arrived. The reason why everyone was looking forward to it wasn't because they wanted to show their support, but because they wanted to watch the show. Everyone seemed to have a premonition that the grand opening of the World Chamber of Commerce would definitely be a show to watch. And today's World Chamber of Commerce was indeed very lively. Because Yu Qianzhou's beliefs from his previous life were deeply ingrained, he really liked the festive feeling of a grand opening. He felt that red should be used today, a good beginning. Thus, long red banners hung down from the top of the World Chamber of Commerce's building. On the banners were some auspicious words to welcome guests from all over the world. As for sects that he was familiar with like Wangu Tong and Mythical Fire Palace, Yu Qianzhou went to visit them a day in advance. He shamelessly begged them to send a long red banner to congratulate him. Wang Yi and the others were rendered speechless by him. They had never seen such a thing before. However, they weren't forcing people to do something, so they all reluctantly sent a banner according to his request. Yu Qianzhou naturally accepted it with a chuckle. He then ordered people to hang the red banners of these large sects in the most conspicuous places of the building to show off their connections. Everyone in the World Chamber of Commerce was forced by him to wear a big red flower on their chests. He himself took the lead and put on a bright red robe. He stood at the door like a bridegroom, cupped his fists and smiled as he welcomed the guests. On the two sides of the door stood 8 people with big red flowers on their chests. They smiled awkwardly as they welcomed the guests. Even Wei Chuanxiu wasn't exempt. However, Wei Chuanxiu felt that the big red flower on his chest wasn't pleasing to the eye. He might as well put it on his back. The group of people couldn't understand. Was there any meaning in doing such a vulgar thing? Of course, there were also people who didn't wear big red flowers. They stood alone on the roof and silently watched Yin Peng below. He wasn't a member of the World Chamber of Commerce, so Yu Qianzhou couldn't force him. But then again, it did give people a very festive feeling. One look and you could tell that the World Chamber of Commerce was holding a joyous event. Not only that, the Wangu Tong sect, Lifire Palace, Spirit Cultivation sect and Skyward Palace's red banners also caused the spectators to feel a sense of awe and respect. These four great sects were willing to hang out their banners to show their support, regardless of whether Yu Qianqiu had a deep relationship with them or not. In the eyes of the spectators, even if their relationship wasn't that deep, it didn't matter. But what most people didn't know was that these four banners were obtained by Yu Qianqiu shamelessly. Please, please, please come in. Yu Qianqiu's face was a little dark as he squeezed out a smile and invited a guy he didn't know into the building. Even though he had decorated the opening ceremony to be very festive, there didn't seem to be many people coming in to support him. The number of people that went in wasn't even as many as the people he had set out to receive. But what made people's hair stand on end was that the people watching the show were densely packed in the air. Yu Qianqiu, who had been suppressing a bellyful of anger, really wanted to use his violet flame-flying sword to send out 10,000 swords at the same time, knocking down all the spectators and dragging them in. However, thinking was just thinking about it. So he could only comfort himself that this was just the beginning, the main character should still be behind. Whispers and laughter filled the air. Wei Chuanqiu walked out of the door with a big red flower on his back. He stared coldly at the people in the air who were laughing at him. The deterrence of an expert was still there. Under Wei Chuanqiu's threatening gaze, all of them shut up. After waiting for a while, Yu Qianqiu, who was wearing a festive red robe, also slowly walked out. He coldly looked around. He also felt that something was wrong. The few guests that went in couldn't even compare to him in cultivation and probably couldn't afford to buy anything. Wang Yi and the other three families should have come to support him, but none of them came. This matter was very strange. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.